When we're able to do work with our family, you did a good job on that. Hey, no, this is how you do it. When we lost that, we lost like a really simple way to exercise fatherhood. And if we had a lot more men striving to be good fathers, you don't have to be more than that. You don't have to be more than a good father.
We grow a lot, and during the right seasons, we eat a lot of our own food. A lot.
Yeah.
You know?
On your homestead, the main thing you're eating is vegetables.
Yeah, homestead is a stretch. I don't even like...
So no, everyone's always discounting themselves. I'm sick of it. Listen, if someone is getting food out of dirt, just give them a little credit.
Right. You made your own butter?
Oh yeah, we made butter this morning.
Is your wife out there with like this big like stick and it's like spinning it in a big barrel? Is that what you do?
Never mind. You know what? You're not a homesteader. Just what are you talking about? Before, how were children formed? When a child exited childhood, the way he became an adult was essentially differentiation. So children are androgynous, girls and boys are together. And then as soon as you hit adolescence, typical formation throughout time, the boys go with the men to become men and the women go with the women to become women. So they diverge. The first president of the American Psychological Association, he noticed, wow, kids are going haywire. They're all like running the streets and they're going crazy. And he called it the storm and stress syndrome. So we talk about what is youth culture? It's a consumerist culture.
Yeah.
It's rapid churn. It's fashion. So when I say homesteading, I just mean you're doing something at home instead of consuming. When the whole family is taking care of each other, it's beautiful and it gets easier.
So we're rolling, by the way. So we're just going. Okay, it's not like we don't have any fancy. Welcome to the Conor Gallagher Show.
Wow.
So
what kind of show is this?
Chemtrails. What do you think? By the way, before you get in that, you answered the phone a second ago. Your kid was calling, and I heard like something about plastic. This is what's going on. Is there a farm thing that requires plastic?
Yeah. So we have a greenhouse. We got it last year. We just underutilized.
Did you buy it to and assemble it? Is it like one of these prefabbed kind of things?
It's Farmer's Friend. I recommend them. It's very simple. It's actually not a true greenhouse. It's a cold frame. But so greenhouse.
What does that mean?
Well, a greenhouse has some sort of insulated barrier, and it's typically heated. Where a cold frame is just plastic, just kind of preserving the daytime heat and some ground warmth. But you can get. So that's where we're trying to propagate stuff and grow. Like right now, it's cold. We want lettuce early. We eat a lot of lettuce, kale, and things like that. So they are doing it. And actually, when I was leaving, I called my wife. She called. I was like so excited. It's like we've hit this moment where things are happening, where it's just the culture of, it's not like me having to do, like the three oldest kids were just doing it because this morning we looked at the weather and it was going to be not windy, which is a good time to put on plastic because it becomes a giant sail.
So putting plastic on what?
It's all right. It's just we flatten out a piece of ground. We put the rebar in the ground, and then there's these giant pipes that go under, and then they're kind of fastened together with these parts, and you just stretch plastic over.
Okay, that's how you make the greenhouse.
That's it. Yeah.
My wife has been dying for a greenhouse because she's really big in the gardening. We have a pretty substantial garden. Have you been to my house?
Nope.
We need to fix that.
I've heard it's really clean. I don't want to be.
It's clean. It's I think you would call it what'd you call a Pinterest farming?
Pinterest farming.
Yeah, but it's a really pretty garden, and we grow a lot. And during the right seasons, we eat a lot of our own food. A lot.
Yeah.
And so that's really cool. But
is that the main? So on your homestead, the main thing you're eating is vegetables.
Yeah, homestead is a stretch. I don't even like.
So no, everyone's always discounting themselves. I'm sick of it because if you say, "Oh, I'm homesteader," some full-time farmer goes, "You don't know anything about farming," and it's like, okay, listen, if someone is getting food out of dirt, just give them a little credit.
Right.
I mean, everyone's always like, "I'm not really doing it."
That's good to hear. That's good. That's good to hear. Yeah. So what? By the way, it's cold out there, and so they're dealing with the greenhouse. Would you rather farm in winter or summer?
Neither. Spring, of course, and fall. Spring's when you're planting stuff. Spring is beautiful because you forgot all the weeds that took over last summer. Like the winter killed them all, and you forgot they're there. So you just have this beautiful soil, and you get out there, and there's all this hope. It's perfect time for like Lent and Easter. It's just perfect. Everything's beautiful. But summer is when everything starts to. I guess it's hard, and things are drying, and then winter because we're dairy farming mostly. That's where most of our food comes from. Winter's awful because the cows are. eating hay, which is not and they're laying in their poop, and it's just nasty, and it's cold, and it's wet, and it's winter's the worst dairy farming. Spring is they're out on the grass, and they smell different.
Do they milk differently?
Oh yeah, they smell different when they come in. When they've been eating fresh growing grass, they you can just smell. And if you've ever had grass fed milk, it has a different smell to it, and that's all right. Interesting fact. So when you think of butter, what color is butter?
Well, yellow. Comes up in the grocery store. Yeah,
that's right.
But that's probably artificial. I bet it's white, it's like white. Milk.
Most butter. Well, no, it is. I mean, so it should be yellow. But if in the yellow only comes from of cows eating actively growing grass. So if the grass is not actively growing, then which means they're feeding hay, then the butter comes out white. So most of the butter in the grocery store is going to be coming from a CAFO farm, like where all the food that the cows eat is brought to them. Very few of the big commercial farms are sending cows out to eat growing grass. They're bringing food to them, right, and kind of managing it, hyper-managed. And that, which I'm just describing. People always get uptight, like, you need to be thankful. I'm like, okay. I don't know why you're so touchy. But that's why the butter is white in the store. So anyway.
You made your own butter?
Oh yeah, we made butter this morning.
Tell me about that.
Well,
is your wife out there with like this big like stick and it's like spinning it in a big barrel? Is that what you do?
Never mind. You know what? You're not a homesteader. Just what are you talking It's like how you make.
It's true. Like I have to watch a YouTube video. I don't know.
The stick, stirring it. That would take 2 weeks and it would never be butter. All right. So what you're describing is a churn, which is not stirring, I guess. And I did have a churn for years. So we've got a lot of machines now. Okay. Oh, am I going to get discounted? You're not doing it right. By the way, those moments I call them, but you didn't make blood sausage. That's like in our family.
You didn't make blood sausage?
So when we moved, we'll go back to the butter churn, which you know nothing about.
I'm more interested in blood sausage.
Well, I moved. We were living in Denver, in the city, or in Littleton, Colorado. We're from North Carolina. That's where we're here now. That's why we're here in the studio, because I live not far, an hour and 7 minutes, because that's why I was late. Okay. 7 minutes. I'm living in Denver. We have these friends. We're having this back to the land movement. And this is 2012. So people were still blogging then, like just normal blogs for your friends and family. Remember? Before, but it was nothing, like you didn't even know like getting sponsors or ads. It was just, it was like an online journal.
Yeah.
So we had one for years, and we had one, and people were reading it because they were interested in our back to the land journey. So we post pictures. We raise a hog. They're getting out. We're going through the adventure of that, which is an adventure because it starts with this cute little piglet and ends as a monster that you really want to kill. And we're showing.
Wouldn't most people say that you really don't want to kill?
No, you don't at first. That's the great thing about pigs. They start so cute. And you're like, I could never kill that little thing. Babe is the cutest little thing. You can never kill him. And then they're like, and they're like coming out, and you're like, just kill it. And no one's sad. No one is sad when you kill a fully, like just a grown out hog. Everyone's like, that thing.
Which I did with you at your one of your pig slaughtering weekends.
That's where we met.
It was awesome.
So blood sausage. I posted pictures on our blog because it's 2012. Is what you still did. And
I just want you to imitate the pig. I can't hold it back. It was awesome. I once had a Jewish girl. That is etched in my head now.
I once had a Jewish girl watch my farm while we went out of town one time, and she was like, a Jewish girl, and she was feeding the hogs, and she had to go in there, and she texted me, and she said, "Now I know why my people don't do hogs." It's like when they're big. I was like, well, I thought it had something to do with God and covenants or something, but. When they're big, they're monstrous and they're really horrifying. Yeah. And like I have had bad dreams where like they knock me over and they're eating my neck.
Do you know why they really don't eat pigs? I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I still want to hear about this blood sausage.
Yeah, we're getting to it slowly.
So there's a really cool book called The Maker's Diet. And it's written by a rabbi or not, like a Jewish nutritionist or whatever, but they go into, the Jews were really clean people. They had sanitation in their clan that the pagans didn't have. You'd have to wash your hands, you wash your feet. It was part of the law. But why did it become part of the law? It's because they understood infection, and they needed to protect the people from disease so that the Messiah would be born from a pure race, a very clean race. So their sanitation was really good. Even this was revolutionary to have like the outhouses outside the camp. You ain't going to do your business right outside your tent. You got to go way out. They understood sanitation. And so the reason there was these weird laws about the types of animals you could or could not eat that are, cloven animals you could or could not eat. And there's all these rules. I forget the details, but one of the reasons that they don't eat pigs is the same reason you wouldn't eat vultures or you wouldn't eat shelled seafood like shrimp. And it's because they're scavengers. And so if you throw a dead carcass in a pig sty, the pig will eat it, and it processes whatever it's eating so quickly. Its stomach is different from other animals, like different from a cow, and its stomach will process that so quickly, and it becomes the carcass that it just ate, or whatever nasty thing it just ate will become part of the pig meat so quickly. Then you kill the pig, you're actually eating whatever it ate, because it processes it and becomes part of its anatomy so quickly. Whereas a cow, it takes forever to digest. Yeah. It has there's different stomachs. I think it has two stomachs versus one stomach or something like that.
You talk about raising them. I mean, a pig is ready. Like when you're ready to kill them, the joke, because they're big, and that happens in like 6 months. They go from piglet to
they're huge,
250 pounds.
But so imagine if you think about this, and it kind of really messed up my bacon eating a little bit, but I really did lose kind of the taste for bacon, because if you think about a vulture, they fly around, you see the dead deer, on the road, and there's like 10 vultures eating it. That's great. Like, you don't want to go eat a vulture. You don't want to eat vultures.
Right.
But shelled fish like lobsters or shrimp, they're the vacuum cleaners at the bottom of the ocean. They're going around and picking up all this nastiness. And in fact, even when you like peel shrimp, you can actually still see its crap in there. Like, you can see a little piece, like it's a little vein. It has their own crap in there. And so it's just nasty, and we're eating it. You
can ruin shrimp for me. You're not
yeah, it's gross. And so the Jews understood that certain animals were dirty. Like, they would refer to these animals as dirty, and pigs were one of those dirty animals because of the way it eats anything. As you know, it'll eat a dead body. Like, if you really want to get rid of a dead human, right, you throw it in pigs and they'll eat everything. Right. Your cow's not going to do that, right? So they eat anything, and then it processes, becomes part of their body very quickly, and then we consume that. That's nasty.
Yeah.
So Jews were onto something, and a lot of people that have cancer or serious heart disease, they will do the quote-unquote maker's diet, because it's a very clean diet. It's just interesting.
Yeah. No, I
got the book downstairs. Seriously, like, if I should give it to you when you leave. Just flip through just to see the Jewish roots to a lot of their spiritual and medical reasons for their kosher diet and all the other things. It's interesting.
Sorry. Well, I come here to leave with free books. That's
awesome. That's what everyone does. Yeah. All right. Blood sausage.
All right, well, but now we got to defend the pig. I will say that's the problem with pigs, though, is that, have you ever heard of Temple Grandin? My friend Craig Tafaro, who's a butcher across the street from me. Okay. Temple Grandin was she's an autistic woman who became very empathetic to cows and livestock, and she basically revolutionized and invented new ways to handle them. We think of like handling cows like cowboys yelling and whipping and branding, and like we kind of have this like, and especially in the United States, like this just real dominating way. It's like we're not like the cowboy's not exactly a shepherd, in our mind, when he's like when they're out there on the range, it's beautiful, but like the way we handle cows is like really brutal. And what happens is you give them the most stressful, fearful moment right before they die, and then you eat the meat, right? And like we're just starting to learn, like, this matters. Like the way we treat things matters. We have dominion, but not absolute dominion. We have to have some deference to the nature. Anyway, she invented whole new ways of handling cows. It basically, like, don't freak them out right before they die, And there's no reason not to. They're easier to handle.
She's a cow whisperer.
Yeah.
You know, the dog whisperer, horse whisperer, it started with the horse whisperers. Mm-hmm. They're real. I don't know if you've ever looked them up, but I mean, horse whispering is
not interested.
Unbelievable. You should be.
No, I have a friend. We're never going to get to the blood sausage. Sorry. I have a friend who he's a horse whisperer, and he like logs with horses and plows with them. He's a really cool old guy. But she said with that you talking about the pigs that, and this is my friend Craig told me this, that she was saying a lot of the abuse that actually happens in animals is in homesteads. Like people will get pigs and they get scared of them, back to the like kill that thing, and they keep them in these tiny pens, and they're in, I had someone say, you got to come help me with these pigs. He was sick and and we went over there, and they were, I'm not kidding you, they were neck deep in mud and they were vomiting, and
it's awful.
It was awful. And we, Craig and I we got them out, and you started rotating them on grass. Now, but pigs are another thing. You can rotate them out on grass. You can give them acorns. We move them around with electric fence. We just moved them last night. And they can be very happy creatures. And now that we have the butcher across the street, I'm like, I think we're eating the best meat possible, because
oh man, that's a lot.
He comes over.
Across. Oh really?
He comes over to the house. We don't even have to put him on a trailer and bring him. He comes over, and the cow, like a cow's going to get butchered. He's like, hey, this is, it's like their only bad day they've ever had. Pow, and then they're dead. Yeah. Right? There's no stress.
Right.
Blood sausage. So we're raising this pig. We're posting pictures of us slaughtering the pig on the internet.
Yeah.
Because that was still not too weird.
Yeah.
But now everyone, like I said, for me, it's weird at this point. Because the best way to homestead is to do something without taking a picture of yourself doing it.
Yeah.
Then you're homesteading. So we kill this pig, and we are going through the adventure of this is the first time I've slaughtered an animal. It's actually super stressful because we did it in the summertime, and my wife and I are just packaging wide open, like trying to keep flies away, trying to preserve this meat we've been growing for 6 months. And we post the pictures online, and the first comment from a friend back in the city was like, yeah, but you didn't make blood sausage. I'm like, how many so discounting the entire thing. You didn't, because they read about blood sausage on some blog or some book, and it's this delegitimizing.
Yeah,
and everyone,
come on, give me credit for all this.
Yeah. But back to your garden, you're like, I'm not really home. It's like, look, if you are, everyone's discounting. Usually with men, it's like, well, I'm not making money from it, therefore it's not real, right? I've got to make everything income, or I'm not legitimate. So they're like, well, I'm not really doing, and
yeah, I just feel like because of my Harris Teeter bill and Publix bill, I'm not a homesteader.
Maybe you are a faker. I don't know.
It's just
worth doing. I mean,
it is. I mean, but I can tell you, man, not only taste, but the experience. You grow something out of the ground for a couple months, and then it's on your table, and it's unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, eggs, of course, we have chickens and things, but we had about 6 cows. I'm sorry, not cows. Goats. Never had it. We almost got a cow.
Yeah,
we had we down payment with you, and we had it on the list.
I think you probably owe me money.
Oh, shut up. And we kind of bailed out the last minute.
That was wise. That was good. That was a well-ordered home decision.
Right. And we had I had 100,000 bees at one point, and that just kind of wore on me, because every Saturday I was putting on this hot suit in the summer, going out there taking care of those things.
Oh wow, you were taking care of them.
That's what a beekeeper is. You're keeping the bees.
But I'm not a good beekeeper. I have a lot of friends that are good beekeepers.
It was exhausting.
I do not like bees.
I do not like bees either. You get this big old suit on, and I'm still getting stung all the time. Like the worst is, you have this, it has this mask thing with this net, and I'm leaning over the box doing the thing, what I call bee abortions. That's basically what a beekeeper does, is they kill all the queens. They find the eggs that are clearly queens, and you don't want extra queens. You need one queen, right? You don't. If you have more queens, then they'll fight,
right? Or
they'll swarm and leave. So you're going in there with this little tool and killing all the little queen babies, But I had this mask on, leaning over. And because it was pressed up against my face, I got stung by 2 bees on the tip of my nose at the exact same time. It was the worst. And then you can't do anything because you got gloves on, and it's awful. I had 2 stingers sticking out of my nose. It was awful, and it was just so painful. But so anyway, I gave it up. I let them just leave. They left.
Well, that's my beef with bees. Is I've had milk cows. When I go outside every morning and every evening, do you know what is inside the milk cow? Milk. Always milk. And she's there, and she's happy to see me, and I give her feed. in the bees, and you get a relationship with milk. I still have my first milk cow that I had in 2012. Her name's Abigail. In fact, the family, we're in this like constant debate on what do we do with Abigail? Because like we eat everything, but everyone's like, one family, we're not eating Abigail, and then the other family like, what better thing could she become than us? Of course, like, let's bury her and let's sell her. Anyway, I go out there and there's milk. I have bees for a while because it was like all the cool kids had bees. Yeah. And a lot of my friends still have bees, and they're good beekeepers. I hear them talk about it, but bees are high management.
They are high management when I can just go down the street and buy,
you can do that with anything. I can go
honey,
buy milk.
Yeah, but honey that the dude grew with bees a mile down the street. Everybody has a little stands and they sell their own honey, and it's delicious. It is better than what you get in the store. It really is. But it was a lot of work for no return.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I went out. There's always milk in the milk cow, and I go out to the beehive, and I have this relationship with this beehive. I'm like, I extract. I'm like, it's going well. I got a lot of bee, and I come out, and they're gone. Like, what do you mean you're gone?
Right.
We had a thing.
We had a thing. They just leave.
This was expensive. Yeah. What am I supposed to do with this suit now?
Yeah. That's a great point. And if you took the cow a mile away, he'd come home.
Yeah.
So
I've had him a mile away. Yeah.
So how long does a cow live?
Well, interesting. I mean, in the
Abigail's 12, right?
Abigail's 12. She's probably she's 14.
She's probably 14.
She's 13 or 14.
You probably got her when she was 2.
Yeah, got her when she was. Yeah, she was. She's only been with me. She was actually there was this guy I bought her from. Apparently, he was a very famous cooking show host, and I went to pick him up, and he's kind of like, "Don't you know who I am?"
Oh.
I don't know. Conor Gallagher. I don't know who. But anyway, I don't know. That wasn't part of this. Yeah, I bought her. So a cow in the commercial setting, I think they only last like 2 years in production, if that.
Are you serious?
They're just cranking them. And if I'm wrong about that, I'm not trying to be offensive, but it's a pretty high turnover because you bring the animal in, you extract as much production. They're forced to have to do this. Just the nature of that. If you're in the industry, they don't last long. But
production in terms of milk,
like commercial. Big time. But on a homestead, you can have a milk cow for 20 years.
Wow. How many calves has she given you?
Oh, goodness. So she just had one.
So the cows hit menopause?
I don't know that answer.
Yeah. Oh. And it's like if the dogs are like 7 years for 1 year, right? What's a cow?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, 20 years
so
seems to be.
She's like an old woman having calves.
She's old.
It's like biblical.
Her bag's real low. It just swings when she runs. Like she can't run anymore, and that's never going back to normal. I mean, that's it. She's actually what's interesting about her. I have nerve damage in my right arm, so I've hand milked her for 6 years. So like my left arm is so much stronger, and I sat on the same side every day for 6 years. And slowly, like now cow will give more in the back naturally, but slowly her front teeth's like acclimated to my weakness.
Oh yeah, wow.
So she's totally lopsided.
Her body changed for you.
I know we are yoked.
That's amazing.
But yeah, poor cow, and she lost another teat to an accident, so she's a 3-teaty cow.
Wow.
3-teated cow. Make sure I say that really clear.
Okay. That's amazing. That's amazing.
I guess I don't know that.
So are you gonna? So what are you gonna do when her time comes? Will you?
Well, my friend Jim, who you met, Jim Curley,
yeah,
when he was
awesome guy.
When he was at the where we met at the pig weekend,
he had a publishing company too.
He had a Requiem Press.
Yeah, awesome.
People still have the little book, the Chapelvale book. That was his. Yeah, that was everywhere back in the day.
Yeah.
Why would you bring up Jim?
I asked what are you going to do with the cow?
Oh, he always says there's nothing an animal can become that's higher than a person. Like when you eat them, that's them. Like their being's not going any higher. It's better than the soil. So those are our two options. Do we eat her, or do we compost her and put her in the ground, just bury her, right?
Yeah.
Or so we have somebody who wants to buy her and has offered me more than she's worth. So although this week she got out like 3 times. And Peter's like, sell her, just get rid of her.
She doesn't go far, right? I mean, they don't want to go far from the barn,
right? She goes
right?
to the feed bin and throws stuff. We've had cows that just will run off, and we kill them. Right. I mean, it's just, in fact, the last cow we butchered was a cow that was bullying Abigail, my oldest cow. It's like, life's too short to have a bully around here.
Yeah.
And then we'll eat her.
Bullying's a real problem these days.
Cows are bullies. Herds of cows are weird. We can't even describe all the things they.
So are you like, are you dogs in packs, they have like alpha males, And
with
the human can be the alpha male for sure. Absolutely. And I got 3 dogs. I'm the alpha male. There's just no question. Like who's in charge. Is it the same way you go out there? How many cows you got out there?
Right now we have 6, 4 in milk.
All right. So are you like the alpha cow? That's not makes you a bull.
Yeah. I mean, no, you have to, I remember when you have to assert like, well, they're trained. I mean, they're like, it's like Abigail, come here. And she comes.
Oh, really?
She comes because she gets a treat and she gets milked, right? Like, so we're probably more like God than alpha. We direct their movement. We bring them to green pastures. We provide what they need and we tell them what to do.
Right.
So we exercise dominion over them.
And so like they're smart enough to totally recognize who you are.
Oh, yeah.
Strangers would.
I say, beware a farmer whose cows don't recognize them, right? You got to be around. But so they come, they have a pecking order. If they're going to the water trough, there's an order they're allowed to go in.
By the way, when you have chickens you have a proper coop, you learn what pecking order actually means. I mean, they have a hierarchy in there. The bird gets higher and higher. The stronger they are, the higher they go, and they will just sit up there and just peck at the peck the head of the chicken beneath them. And that's a real thing, and it's an interesting.
Yeah, the cows have it. They'll. But we had a cow that was bullying. So Abigail's like a grandmother, though. Are we going to talk about cows the whole time?
I don't know.
Abigail's like a grandmother. So she just like puts up with everyone. Like everyone, it's kind of like no one's really in charge of her. She's just like she's part of the herd.
She's the matriarch.
Yeah, she's had. I think all of them come from her. The herd. But as far as how you asked earlier, how many she's given us, we name our cows in alphabetical order, and we've been through the alphabet.
Are you serious?
Multiple times.
Are you serious?
But no, think about it.
Over 40 cows.
You have 4. You have for us 3 to 6 dairy cows for over 10 years. I don't have a calculator. Over 10 years, you're breeding them every year.
Everyone has basically one per year.
Mm-hmm. A baby every year. That adds up pretty quick.
Oh my gosh. Are you out there for the births or do they just usually do it at night?
I have only pulled, everyone's always like, these poor, and it's just like a habit of old farmers around me even like, yeah, we had to pull a calf last night. I'm like, did you try leaving her alone? Because
see what happens.
They're always yanking on these poor calves. I've only had to pull a calf once. And I'm still not even sure if I really needed to. She just was taking a long time.
It takes time.
And again, if they can't give birth, you shouldn't have that cow. You should put her in the freezer. It sounds real brutal. I'm not trying to sound, but you got to be real with the what your family can do, what the herd can do. But no, they have it out. We go out and watch it just because it's beautiful and the kids have seen it.
So you eat cow from your land. You eat pigs from your land. Anything else? Eggs, of course.
Yeah, we do.
You got goats or anything that you eat? No. You ever had goat meat? I've never. Have you heard that it's the most popular meat in the world?
Yeah. Well, whenever anyone.
Is that true?
Well, I'm like, oh, you eat that Muslim meat? And that's what I tell people. It's because in Islamic countries, I think
that's what they eat. Yeah.
So yeah, there's these kids in my church that are selling goat milk, and we sell some cow milk, and I'm like, oh, you got everybody drinking that Muslim milk. I don't know about that Saracen milk in here. We stick to dairy.
Hey, thanks guys for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it. And I appreciate that very much.
Catholics.
So what else you got going on the farm?
Okay.
So when I have your contact, when somebody sees the contact in here for you, it says Farmer Jason. That's your contact name.
That's funny.
So we were talking about, okay, people don't give enough credit to people homesteading or whatever. In your mind, what is a farmer? And is a farmer different than a homesteader? How do you define your terms a little bit? I'm not trying to be
it's important. That's important. So you guys published a book, right?
Yeah. Oh, we should have brought it in here. When we're taking a break in a little bit, we'll bring it back in.
No, but in there.
It's behind them. Oh, there it is. It's right. Yeah, it's back there. Liturgy of the Land. Grab it if you want it. Yeah, there's his book.
Get your copy today.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
So in that.
Is this this is your farm, isn't it?
No, that's not.
That's not.
You guys picked that picture.
You got a lot.
But the pictures in there are from us.
Yeah, you got a lot of pictures in here.
So
You have your own chapel.
I know. We always we remember when you're on we always joke when whenever we pray the Angelus, we pray to the east, and that the Protestants across the street
it's probably a Baptist church,
would
right?
cease their false worship and give it to us.
Oh, that's funny.
The Catholics.
It's a beautiful book. They're great pictures of you.
There you go. That's butter making.
Yeah, there he is. I was expecting to see your wife churning the butter. I'm just kidding.
No, we need to go back to the churning. We've got to clear that up because your ignorance is.
Yeah, sorry.
No, in that we do define. So
here, I'll put this up
and then we could talk about. I think this would be important because you're, a business whiz, like and I think you're dealing with the economic fact of most men's lives are the outside globalizing economic reality is what we're in. And when that happened, what we lost is the very simple reality that the family was not meant to just be together for mutual support of individual endeavors, right? That's not like, that's how we think about the family as the purpose of it is to my family really supported me. Therefore, the purpose of the family is to support the person in pursuing their individual dreams, right? That's not the purpose. The purpose of the family is to do something together, to work together. Like Eve is a helpmate. Children are helpers on the farm. Like the family is essentially
helpers are different from supporters.
Yeah, that's very different.
Yeah, you have a support group where people say you can do it.
Yes,
and helpmates are actually out there digging the ground with.
But that's what a family is more of a support group. That's what we think about.
That's what we think about.
Yeah,
it.
like an emotional, a psycho-emotional, support group. That's what we are. And we as fathers are supposed to enable it by paying for whatever they need to until they get to the breaking point when then they can break off and go get their own debt, right?
Yeah.
This again. When you start talking about this, people are like, then you can't use air conditioning because you're not thankful enough to technocracy. I'm like, okay, can we just talk about this for a minute? The hard thing with fathers is that we're not good at managing an institution that is based on like psycho-emotional intuition and problem solving. Like we're pretty good at business and building stuff and doing things, but we're not good at that. So if the family is essentially like a psychological help group or an emotional support group, we're not really good at that. And it doesn't give us a lot of opportunities for like the guidance and the mentoring that should come from fatherhood. But we're good at like sometimes our best, like the guys that we have the bonds with are the ones we're in battle with at work, real battle, sports. And to say that that's not an emotional setting is not, I mean, we don't need to separate emotions. That's part of us. And men are very much expressive of emotions. They're really good at it actually. Like look at when guys are cheering at a sports game, that's an emotion, right? I mean, it's not. So anyway, the home is an economic unit, and we do a good job when we're able to do work with our family. We're actually you did a good job on that. Hey, no, this is how you do it. Unless we don't have the culture of it, we just yell at our kids because they don't. How do you not know how to do that? Because you didn't teach me. But when we lost that, I'm going to answer your question in this. When we lost that, we lost like a really simple way to exercise fatherhood. So when I say homesteading, I just mean you're doing something at home instead of consuming. Because the home is primarily a place we go out, we make money, we bring it home where it is spent. Like that is the defining characteristic of the suburban model, the suburban consumerist model of our country, which I mean, this is what we're built on right now, is that you can live anywhere because you can go to work, bring it home and consume it. So the house, like the literal house in the household, does not produce anything. It watches stuff, it eats things. I mean, cooking is the most productive thing that happens in most homes. At least you're taking a raw material and turning it into something better, which is what culture is. So that's why meals are so important. It's probably the only piece of culture you actually have. Because people are like, we want to have a Catholic culture, but that usually means like branding your home, like, okay, now we have a Catholic picture of it. But, I mean, culture is making stuff. That's what culture is. Like it's taking raw materials and having a meal, or taking an instrument and making music. Like culture is making things together that like is sustaining other people. So when I say homestead, I just mean you're growing, making, fixing. Now I'm talking mostly about like the food, but there are other ways to do this. I mean, one of the best agrarians I know is a mechanic. Like they work on cars, like they're doing something. But for a father being, excuse me, for a father who just comes home and is just like helping the family consume, it's hard to bring. So the homestead is doing something versus a farm today is where you're making your income, right? So that you can probably, support your household. So farming is, I have to make money from these crops or these livestock. And this day and age, if you didn't, it is very hard to go from not farming to farming right now. I mean, the amount of the loss of farmers is staggering. And it's not just, and everyone thinks, if I could afford land, I'd be a farmer. No, it's also, you lost the culture of it, the habit of it, the mindset of it. It'd be very hard to go from zero to farming, right? If you're just like in a suburb, like, I'm going to start a farm. People used to go farming because they didn't have other economic options. It was sort of like, well, I guess I'll go farm. Now it's like you have to have pretty substantial means to even be able to think about starting a farm.
Is the hardest part knowledge, or is the hardest part for somebody to go to farming, let's say, is it knowledge? Is it the lack of knowledge? Or is it really their habit of total consumption? Because if you're going to switch to that, then your income is going to go down. And
how much based on how much you're actually going to depend on it. Yeah.
So, I mean, so we have a habit of just not my family per se, but everyone have a habit of just wanting everything on demand. Mm-hmm. And when you switch to farming, all of a sudden your whole annual life cycle changes. It requires patience. It requires hard work. And you're not going to have the means to go out to the grocery store or do Uber Eats delivery to your front door whenever you want. I think everything changes. I bet it's not that hard to learn it. I'm not trying to diminish the learning, but there's resources out there. But it's actually the toughness of stop being a consumer. Like that has got to be really, really hard.
Yeah, because that's a habit of mind that you're, it's like all of us are raging liberals in like the sense. And I'm like, well, I'm a conservative. Like, no, actually, the autonomous self and the glory of freedom. Like these are liberal. Like, but we don't even know it because it's the air we breathe.
Yeah.
Consumerism is the air we breathe. So I think, at the conference that you guys sponsored, TAN, the three things I was trying to think, like, what are the real barriers? Because there's so many people that I want to live differently. I want to live differently. So it's like, what are the real barriers to actually like becoming a homesteader or a farmer? And in here we talk about the different, we have the spectrum of somebody who's like literally full-time homesteading, right? Which is somebody like Jim Curley, or his income is supplemental because you're always going to need money. You're just going to have money. Is supplemental to what is primary occupation, versus someone like me is like a sideline where we need the food we're growing, but I still have a job. Mm-hmm. If we do need our food, it's not like if we didn't have it, we would be in trouble, versus someone who's like just growing some vegetables in the backyard. And all those are good. But the three barriers are, one is in our imagination. Because we have no image, no tradition of it, it's not something we've inherited, we don't know what we're doing. So we have no images, no imagination for it. But the flip side of that is because we have the internet and we're flooded with images of what it ought to look like, we also have too many images. So we don't have an authentic image in like an inherited culture. And then we have, this sort of Pinterest-fed idealization of something that we've never done. So then we might show up and we go, well, this isn't what it's supposed to look like. Well, how do you know? You didn't inherit it and you looked at a bunch of pictures on your phone. It might look exactly like this. In fact, this is what it looks like. This is it. You're doing it. Like, oh, it's not what I imagined. So it's a lot
uglier than Chip and Joanna Gaines' garden.
Oh, it's extremely ugly.
It's ugly, and you have this beautiful white picket fence around your garden, which we had, and then 6 months later, it's like, how did half the fence become brown?
Yeah,
and and then you have to accept that and realize that you don't live on Pinterest. And the question is are you trying to create a scenic thing that you want to look at from from inside your air-conditioned home and have something nice to show your friends, or are you actually doing it for the utility of growing food?
Yep.
And it's kind of like books, right? I mean, books are wonderful. Books are wonderful decoration in a house. Like you put the beautiful leather books up on the bookshelf, all surrounding your television.
Yeah.
And you never do anything with those books other than have them surrounding your television. And it almost makes you feel like an erudite person just having beautiful leather-bound books all through your house when you actually
just describe this room
a little bit. But my house actually has way more books around the television.
Way more books around the
actually, because we have to take a break in a second, but we should actually tell you our ritual for if we watch TV. It's absurd.
I need to know that. Wait, you didn't let me finish the three things.
Sorry.
If we're taking a break,
let's wrap 60
this
seconds,
up.
So I got to take a break.
the imagination. Impatience is the second biggest problem. People
For sure.
want to
Well,
show,
that's what I was saying.
People want to show up. Yeah, you said the word exactly. Patient. People want to show up and be there, and that's really a lack of humility. Just you don't know what you. Just give yourself and your land some time. But they want to show up. I don't have any images in my head, so now I'm conjuring them up, and now I'm impatient because it's not here now. And the third one is they don't want a conversion. And that's what you're bringing up with the. I think there's an actual conversion that happens, and whether it's from consumerism or from sin, right? I mean, if you're going to experience a conversion when you're having to do a work and live a way of life that you've never lived. And most people just aren't willing to really have those three things. They kind of think, I've already got it figured out. And if I could afford land, I'd be building a Catholic village already, and probably other people will join me. And we'll have a little white chapel on the hill in no time. And they're delusional.
They're delusional.
They're and prideful.
Yeah, it's almost like nostalgia is actually not a good thing,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, nostalgia means homesickness, but if you don't even know what it looks like, but you're not willing to be converted. You're actually wanting to just impose your will on the land. And my friend wrote Wendell Berry, said, I'm going to move back to the land and like solve all my problems. And he wrote him back and said, don't move back to the land. It doesn't need you and your problems,
That's awesome.
So
we're going to be back in a few minutes. All right. So Jason, after your conference, the Liturgy of the Land conference that I spoke at, we were talking about, I don't know, the stuff we always talk about. And you said something like, I'm tired of talking about leadership. I'm tired of people talking about leadership. I want to talk about fatherhood. We don't need leaders. We need fathers. And I've been kind of pondering that ever since. What do you mean?
Well, I think, all right, so the brilliance of, like when you were telling me about your well-ordered home stuff, I'm like, oh, great. He was like, the business solutions are going to fix all our problems. But you made a good case. We talked about it at some point. I'm sure you talked about it.
I never said it's going to fix all of our problems.
No, I don't mean that.
I mean that we have a major unnatural world here. Like we have an unnatural problem.
I was re-articulating your point.
So we need to bring order
Yes.
to the natural law so that grace flows, right? Grace perfects nature, right?
Yeah.
So you start with natural.
You won me over. You already won me over.
All right.
But you were applying what men know,
Right.
which is the leadership in business. Like just bring it home because a
Right.
lot of them. And you said, actually, so at that conference, you said, stop being a victim, which that was like the mind blowing thing. All the men that, like whatever's going on, like, the example I use is like, I hear fathers talk about, I'm when their daughters become a cheerleader or something. I can't believe the way they have them dress and they have them dance and like,
well, you knew
march out.
Yeah.
Like you bought the uniform.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, so don't be a victim of it. Go out and like, how many things would stop tomorrow if fathers showed up and said, this is not happening anymore.
Acted like fathers.
But I think what we were talking about is this idea actually we've been batting around, I guess I'm allowed, like with Belmont Abbey even. And,
sure.
Is there's a lot of young men for whom the sale of success has been become a leader, right? And that's like, everything you go to, like when you're like, become a leader, right? Become a leader, which when we hear leader,
we say that constantly. Yeah.
What does it mean though? Like obviously everyone can't lead, right?
Right. Actually,
everyone
statistically, it's 4% of the population actually leads something. That's a real stat out there. So it means that not everyone's going to lead. So why are we telling everybody to lead?
Why are we telling everybody to lead? And what do we mean by become a leader? What do we really mean?
Yeah, let's define the terms.
I think we mean you're a successful leader of a company, right? Or like you own something. I don't think we say leader, like you're not thinking fatherhood, which is why like on the like advertisements for kids, it'll be like a, become the next batch of leaders. It's always that, which is
You're
like,
right. It kind of bothers me now that you said it. That's why I'm asking it now.
Why is that proposed? Again, that's the air we breathe that we never question. When did we start using the word leader? And like, is there anywhere in the wisdom, like does Proverbs say like be a leader? Now I'm sure there are, people like to quote people perish for lack of vision and these quotes that are in Proverbs, but
it probably says be wise.
Be wise. Yeah. Or right. I know Proverbs is written father to son. So it's probably be a good son, which means become a good father, which means order your household. And if we had a lot more men striving to be good fathers, you don't have to be more than that. You don't have to be more than a good father. Because of course it's going to accompany, economic prudence with your home, probably which more in the realm of like simplifying so that you can be together more instead of spending together more.
What drives me crazy about the whole concept of leadership is inevitably, if you really look through history, the majority of the greatest leaders are ones who try their best to hide from it. So this idea we're pushing our children to become great leaders, what are you talking about?
Like, we use words that Aquinas would sound, do we get dorky now? Aquinas says, but he does. Ambition is a vice.
Right.
Be and he literally uses the phrase. I mean, he talks about, he gives the example of the soldier, right? So the soldier has his medals on his chest, right? Which, like, a lot of them would have, if you look at like generals from like World War I and II, there's like just a couple medals, and today there's like this like massive switchboard.
They weigh 10 pounds more.
You know, it's like, oh wow, they must have achieved a lot, you know, saving the world from the Nazis. But he says, you know, that's there to honor, so that actually we look at it and society has placed on them the medal, that is worth honoring. So that the medal is actually a public thing. It's for us. But I think when we twist this whole leadership thing is that you actually just strive for the medals themselves, which is vainglory and the vice of ambition, which is just always striving and climbing for the honor that is virtue's reward. So instead of teaching them, be virtuous, be fathers, like who you are, what you are, because that all of those things relate to God and your family. We're telling them to be leaders, which I can't help but think means control. I mean, that's like control and domination over people. Like even the conversations about marriage and family are so boring because it's just who's in charge. So the analogy of the family is now who's the boss? Who gets to be the boss in this power sharing, brokering?
I've actually gotten really tired of the subject.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
What we call gender roles now, but I mean it's annoying. I get really tired of talking about the role of women. I'm tired of it. It just doesn't. A, you get nowhere because you just create enemies on all sides.
Right. And
B, there's just more interesting things to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Or I don't think you're bored with, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's boring because there's really just one model. And because this is back to the homesteading thing we talked about. When you haven't inherited a normal, functioning, healthy culture and you're trying to make it up, therefore, or you're trying to reclaim it, recover it. Publishers love that word, reclaiming masculinity. When you're trying to reclaim something, it means you don't know what it looks like exactly.
Right.
So you've got to come up with some image in your mind. And I think the reason we even talk about roles is because, you know, and everyone talked about that like the 1950s and stuff. Actually, instead of getting all philosophical about it, I think it's just because we have pictures of it. So we can look at a picture and go, well, maybe that's what it looks like.
Right.
And then we kind of imitate that picture, which is like, look, Scripture says, like in Proverbs 31, what is the perfect wife doing? And she's like buying fields and planting them. Like she's an economically impactful part of the household. But like, anyway,
go all the way back to Aristotle, and he wrote a book on, I can't say the Greek word, but it's oikomonia or something.
Oikonomia.
There you go. Right. Yeah. The economy. And it's basically women are controlling the household. I mean, we know that from Roman society, Greek society, like women were controlling the household. I mean, it's very clear. My house, my wife's in charge of everything, you know? And so that's part of the struggle. And what I've tried to do with Will or family is when a husband comes home, you know, you're home all the time because you work at home, essentially being a farmer, but
I'm not a farmer.
You are.
I work at home. I'm a homesteader.
Okay, you're right.
And I have a job.
You're right. Because you said farmers make their money look, you know.
No, okay. I don't make an income.
But my point is that when guys go home and the wife's running the household very, very well, they don't know how to fit in.
Yeah.
They don't really know what to do.
You're in the way.
Yeah.
You actually you disrupt things.
Right.
And then you try to exercise your leadership style at home.
Right.
And it's like,
it's a mess. So I'm trying to help kind of work on that. Now,
I think it's excellent.
Now, let me ask you this. So when Tim or Kevin or whoever reached out to you about coming on the show, you said, I don't want to talk about homesteading. Let's talk about fatherhood.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to just ask, like, why is it? I mean, because I understand it. I mean, you are like the homesteading guy. Everyone likes talking about Jason, Craig, and homestead. Are you just tired of the subject and you want to talk about other things, or what's that about? Why did you say what you said?
No, that's a good question. I wonder. Well, I mean, one, we published a book. I published a book with Tan and Tommy wrote it. It's like, you do a lot of interviews.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, we're going to talk about homesteading again. I mean, that's just.
I know.
You Google it. It's out there.
Right.
But I enjoy talking with you particularly because you're a businessman. You're in the city. I know you have your homestead, which I'm calling it a homestead.
Cities.
You hate cities, but like
Cain is the founder of cities. So I hate cities.
Cain.
Yeah, Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel.
Heard about that.
And then Scripture says he went off and founded a city.
Yeah.
Cities come from Cain.
And the first one, but see, we don't know the name of his city, right? I always joke because Cain's grandson. Yeah, that is. But Cain's grandson, one of them, Enoch.
Yeah.
I say he's like Scripture's first rapper because he brags about having multiple wives, and he brags to his multiple wives about how he kills men that insult his ego. And then he names a city after him, right? So I'm like, he's
the first rapper.
He's a rapper. I mean, even Enoch. It even sounds like a rap name.
Yo, what's up, Enoch?
Yeah, this is Enoch killing some dudes for my lady. He's bragging to his multiple wives. He's got women
dudes for my ladies.
He's violent. He's got a city named after himself, right? And there's a lot in there about the founding of cities for yourself and then naming them after yourself. That's ego, man.
So I learned the other day, speaking of Enoch, that when Father Sebastian Walsh was sitting right here in this chair, I was sitting there, and we did this episode on John the Baptist, which by the way is an incredible episode. Like right. You're not a big podcast listening guy, but you should sit down with your wife and kids and listen to an hour and a half of Father Sebastian Walsh and I talking about John the Baptist and why he's the high priest.
Okay. And
what the real meaning of Jesus' baptism was. Amazing. But one of the things that tradition talks about in regards to Elijah and Enoch, we don't know much about him, right? Is that tradition holds that they didn't actually go up to heaven, but they're in the Garden of Eden right now, which is guarded by an angel. So I guess it's like removed from GPS, and you can't get there, and you can't find it. But they're actually there eating from the tree of life, and before the second coming of Christ, they'll become present. They'll walk out of the Garden of Eden and evangelize to the world. That's pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah. We need to create another movie like later Raiders of the Lost Ark or something, but we try to find the Garden of Eden and Enoch.
Have you not got the message? Like that's not your job. There's an angel.
I know. There's an angel. Come on.
It's already defeated Google.
Maybe like we can negotiate with the angel and find it. I don't know.
See, the businessman. What a leader.
Moses negotiated. No, wait a minute. Yeah, Abraham negotiated and saved a city. You know?
Cities.
Negotiating's good. So fatherhood.
I think, when we were talking about the homesteading, like the reason I'm homesteading, the reason I'm at home is the same reason a lot of men are, I think aching. They want to, they can't figure out, why is it so hard to have and raise like an orderly family like now? Like, why does it feel like the whole world is against me? It's like, well, it kind of is. I think and so the reason I'm homesteading is just to be home as a father doing work, which is like the most, because if I was an extraordinary dad, meaning a good leader, if I was like organized and super disciplined, I think I could be like a good businessman, like suburban dad, but I'm not, I don't think I'm good at those things. But if I can work with my kids, I can do that. It's like a more entry level. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's not entry level though. I mean, it's just, I hear what you're saying.
It's natural. I think it's natural. In this natural setting, I can thrive. In the less organic setting, I don't think
you're getting in your car and driving 30 minutes and walking into a building with a bunch of other people is not exactly natural.
Yeah.
The Industrial Revolution did this. I mean, it pulled people off the farms and stuck them in like the most unsanitary buildings on the planet. By the way, like when you look into, which I did a study of because of Catholic social doctrine, and I've taught that a couple different places, college, high school. And when you really start looking into what the living conditions were like of these people that lived on nice farms, and the young man gets married and decides to leave the farm, probably the older son's inheriting. So the second oldest son is like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
There's this beautiful thing, downtown London. It's called a textile mill. Yeah. And you can make money. They hand you cash money every day,
Yeah.
And they go there and they take their new wife and their couple little babies, and they're pursuing their dreams, and they go live in total and complete disgusting muck of an inner city that's violent, that's loud, filled with disease. The water is disgusting. The sewage is horrendous. There's like a documentary about nurses and their journals about what they saw in the 1800s in downtown London.
Slums.
Yeah, I mean it's horrific.
Yeah.
And it's kind of actually that's where like the whole I think 1891 when Leo XIII wrote Rerum Novarum, is kind of like the first Catholic social doctrine encyclical. he's talking about that as like an image of unbridled capitalism. And this is just what happens when money prevails and he who has the capital wins and everyone else is a laborer. And he condemns it. In fact, there's a little thing I like to say to the students whenever I'm teaching this. You know, when you think about the game Monopoly, and I love playing that with my kids because I actually break all the rules when we start negotiating. I say, here, I'll give you $500 if I get a right of first refusal and all these things. And you start breaking the rules. It's really teaching them how to
lead.
Yeah. We're going to be leaders. I'm going to show you how to, but I'm going to ask you this pop quiz. What's the objective of the game Monopoly? How do you win? How do you win Monopoly?
Wait, it ends? The game ends? I thought you just get bored with it.
It does end. How do you win, Jason? How do you win the game
By
Monopoly?
being in charge, by putting everyone else out of business?
Bingo.
Yeah.
By putting everyone else by bankrupting everybody else.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. It's like you don't win because you accomplish something itself. You win when everyone else is in total destitution.
Yeah. And that's you're connecting Rerum Novarum and it's true. Yeah. And what I'm saying, you know, I don't know your typical audience, somewhat conservative, United States. I don't know.
My typical audience in Tanzania are usually the flaming liberals that love liturgical dance, you know, radical feminists, people that really are working to improve the public school system.
Save the Department of Education.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, but but those of us that laugh, the problem is
supporters.
Right now there's so many things that are easy to laugh at, right? Like the transmania. It's just it's not that many people realistically. We can have a heart for people that have genuine confusion about, but like the whole charade of all the stuff of the woke. It's so easy to laugh at and to point at and to see as an obvious enemy that we're actually not looking at the things that are really hurting and harming our family. And this is talking about fatherhood and economics and all that. The sociologist like Mary Eberstadt, like her work is excellent. How the West Really Lost God.
Yeah.
What we think.
I need to have her.
Absolutely.
Kevin.
Wait, hey, I'm still here.
That.
I'm still here. You start going on to the next. He's bored of me.
All right, let's cancel him. Let's go someone else.
Monopoly's over.
No, she would be a great guest.
So her big point, her work is life-changing for me because what gets proposed is either what's corrupted our kids and lost our family, or the reason our kids aren't Catholic is because the atheist won the argument, right? That atheism is and secularism is liberating, it's true, and it's hard to argue with. We hear that, or they're just corrupted morally. That the culture, society has just corrupted their soul, and they left the church because of sin. And what she shows us, which none of us are really willing to look at, no, it's pretty much we chose it. The economic cultural environment that we embrace. It's like you say, don't be a victim. Well, we have embraced ways of living and ways of understanding the world and economics and the ordering of households that she shows. This is how when you lose the family, you lose the faith. So whatever is harming the family is what's going to harm the faith. Because atheists don't have good arguments. Like Aquinas dismantled atheist argument. Like they're not, every time I try to read one, like I have atheist friends and family and I'll read these books like Dawkins and I'm like, this is it? Like this is answerable stuff. Because they're always just arguing with like 13-year-old fundamentalists that don't exist, you know. They're not really reasonable arguments. And then when it comes to corruption and of our morals, it's really just we let them do it. Like we bought them the device that they discovered pornography on, right? Like you bought it for it. You brought it into your home. So I've had this discussion and fathers we get like up in arms, like you're questioning because it's like you're questioning capitalism, right? Or something. There's this like, so okay, let's just look at the economic reality of places like Ireland. Like Ireland, like after everyone else was collapsing, Ireland in the 80s was still solidly Catholic, 80% mass attendance, right?
In the 80s?
Yeah, in the 80s. So they made everyone was going crazy.
Declined quickly.
Yes. So what happened? Because I remember listening to Rush Limbaugh driving around. My father was a plumber, driving around in the work truck, listening to Rush Limbaugh say, look what's happening in Ireland. This is awesome. They liberated their markets. They opened up to foreign investment. And look how they called it, was it the Celtic Tiger?
Wow.
The economic growth of Ireland was exponential. So they held on to the faith the longest up to the 80s. And through the 90s, they opened up, you know, the free market, the globalizing powers, the foreign investment. And what happened?
So it's kind of globalism kind of came in.
It came in and it's traceable. The places where there was the most investment had the greatest decline. So we kind of export this like economic model of sort of absolute market liberty. And I feel like we weren't supposed to talk about this. Like, but you try to talk about this to people and they won't. And I had this conversation with multiple people like, well, but then they had more choice of products and all, like, but they lost their soul. Like, so now the exact opposite is true. There's 80% of them don't go to mass anymore. They passed abortion laws. They liberalized. And it's actually this environment of the family and our economics and our culture. Those are the things that fathers are having a hard time wrestling with, that we're like embracing.
Yeah.
And that's Mary Eberstadt. She said, we lost the family, primarily the Industrial Revolution and the subsequent economic realities that families found themselves in. It has done us harm. And there are really good fathers out there that are able to navigate, and by good leadership, force of will, discipline, organization, just like really good men, they can like make it. But for huge, so if you say 4% of people are like actually, like, let's just say then, okay, 96% of people are just average guys. They're dying. Like, they're really struggling to keep their family. Just like, how many families are going to be the last generation of Catholics? That's hard. It's not, a lot of people have this silver bullet thing. Well, if the liturgies were better, or if this were better. And it's actually not true. I mean, everything matters, right? If it's worth talking about, it's got some truth to it. But it's kind of this whole environment that we're losing our families as fathers. And I think when you talk about the Industrial Revolution, what happened after that, one thing that's really I'm just wrestling with lately that I'm interested to talk about with you, is why I brought it up and you asked the question, is the invention of youth culture.
Yeah.
As it's an artificial thing. Like because when do we lose our kids, right? When they're teenagers. Like, that's when we lose them. Like, our culture has invented teenagers. We invented
for real
youth.
Then
the youth culture went into war with actual culture, and now the youth culture won. And we're even in the church, like, we're like the topic of youth ministry, like, how do we reach the kids today and all stuff. Like, we're not asking the right questions.
Man, it's really good. So I've thought a lot about that, actually, the youth culture. So when do you think it happened? Because I have an idea.
Oh, I've geeked out on this. All
right, go ahead.
All right. So one, father leaves home for the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, okay. But okay.
Right? No. I'm going to the 60s really quick.
Okay.
Then mom leaves home.
Right.
So then we have, before how were children formed? When a child exited childhood, the way he became an adult was essentially differentiation. So children are androgynous, girls and boys are together. And then as soon as you hit adolescence, typical formation throughout time, the boys go with the men to become men and the women go with the women to become women. So they diverge. So mom's gone from the home, dad's gone from the home. We get the rise of public schooling. We have Hall. Hall was the first president of the American Psychological Association. He noticed, wow, kids are going haywire, because instead of being at home on the farm working with their dad, learning discipline and being frugal, or at home economics with mom, they're all like running the streets and they're going crazy. And he called it the storm and stress syndrome. Right, that this adolescence was just like, wow, it's obviously a tense, which it is. It's hard. Your hormones, you grow, you got new strengths, you smell bad. Some of us grow out of that. And Hall, somebody should look it up. Manly Hall. He's the first president of the American Psychological Association.
Can you Google?
And he proposed that, hey, basically, we've got to get these kids in public school. So for the first time in history, never were teenagers, i.e., males and females, grouped in mass together to be educated, to become adults together, overseen, especially, later predominantly by women. Because we accept these things now, and it's like when that happened, the church had it's like Pius XI, a church an encyclical on education. He condemned it. Like, you guys are delusional if you think you can educate girls and boys together in their adolescence. Weren't you a teenager once? Yeah. Were you ever 15? So for the first, we basically continued childhood. So this androgynous reality, girls and boys together when they're children, is normal.
Yeah, innocent little kids.
And then the teenagers remain together with no parents around.
Which perpetuates adolescence.
Which creates adolescence. I mean, it creates that whole teenager, that like aloof, unapproachable like image you have, right? That's how I describe like teenagers. They become disinterested, unapproachable, like weird. Like, what are you over there? But anyway, I get ahead.
Hey, Jason, it was G. Stanley Hall.
G. Stanley Hall. So they're all together in these schools. Mom and dad are not there. First of all, that's never happened before. There's never been a moment where girls and boys, young men and young women were educated together without their parents around. Slowly, the culture of intergenerational cultural and things, dances, work, festivity, those are fading away. And they're all in school. We get World War II, a lot of dads die, there a lot of social problems. Then we get an economic boom. So the marketers, the businesses notice, wow, look at all these kids with a lot of money. So they start inventing ways to capture that money. So like music is an example.
Well, see, that's the thing. Okay, I was just going to say to your question, Elvis. That's all I was going to say.
That is the answer. Okay, no.
And you did geek out on it. And in fact, you could go a little bit further back from Elvis. You could actually go to Motown. Motown, which Elvis
but you have the quote of Elvis, right? Someone said, we knew we lost our kids when he first shook his hips on TV.
Yeah, when he first shook his hips. Yeah, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting. Just look at any of the pictures of your grandparents or great-grandparents when they were 12, 13, 14 years old. They looked like 18.
Yeah.
Because they had hairdos that looked like adults. They had suits and ties, or their girls, there's like a picture of a 14-year-old girl, but she looks like an adult, like a beautiful young.
Well, connect it to the clothes. I mean, what else were they going to wear?
Right, exactly. There was no teenage version at the department store. There wasn't. And kids at that age, they wanted to look older. They wanted to look like adults, And so, but with Elvis came an adolescent culture where it was the music. It started with the music. Didn't start with clothes.
Yeah.
Elvis, I think, was the first person where the first major musician, probably Motown was before him, but that was more relegated to the black culture and, white kids got into it. But predominantly Elvis, that was the first time where the older parents didn't listen to Elvis. 50-year-olds didn't listen to Elvis. It was the teenagers.
Yeah.
It was the first time in history where music became age-based.
Yeah.
And then it was clothes-based, hairdo-based, everything-based.
So we talk about what is youth culture? It's a consumerist culture.
Yeah.
It's rapid churn. It's fashion. Because it has to change, because you get a decent suit, you're going to have it forever, right? The bell bottoms can't last forever. We've got to change the style, because we've got to keep the churn going, which now is our economic. I mean, we are.
That's why they cycle through it.
They have to.
Now bell bottoms come back, and it's just you have to cycle through. You run out of ways to dress.
I heard someone with the music. I agree with you, because the interesting thing that I found out geeking out was I didn't know. I think it was Trey Bailey that told me this, maybe, or a friend of Trey's. A mutual friend of ours. I don't know why I bring it up on the podcast.
Hey, Trey.
He that music was originally. No, it's someone else, Trey's friend. I'll think of it later. Music was the reason record companies existed was to give you music that you could hear, so that you would buy the sheet music from them to play as a family.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
That was the
original.
And I actually own a record, and on the cover you see this change, and it says, "Learn to play music to impress your friends," and it has a picture of a young man playing the guitar with all these girls looking at him, right? And it's an animated thing. And I'm like, that's it. That is when, so in our kit, when I found this out, we totally geeked out. Because where I live is where the clawhammer banjo is from. So we've picked up folk music, and for us, it is an utter rebellion. And we talk very explicitly with the kids, like, look, I think it's great that you can play Thunderstruck on a mandolin. That's just cool.
That's pretty cool.
But
my kid plays on guitar. That's pretty awesome.
The guitar actually is what
AC/DC for those nerds out there.
Nerd, yeah, total nerd.
No, I think the nerds are the ones that didn't know it. Actually, ACD can get kind of nerdy.
It's okay.
Sorry, keep going.
When they play that, though, I'm like, okay, but look what happens when you're playing this music. It's performative. The purpose of it, you go back to what you talk about, why you want leaders. It's performers. The purpose of art, the purpose of gift, of talent, of discipline is performance, is celebrity.
Yeah.
Versus the folk music we play, and the reason we're very strict in our home, and with their understanding, we're trying to explain it as a rebellion. This is a gift that you have to share.
To share.
Folk music, as you play it, people can gather around, they can join in, they can leave. It's not performative. Whereas music, they say, if the culture, so the birth of youth culture, the 50s starts happening, the 60s, and then they say at Woodstock, the kids won, right? If youth culture and adult culture, or just culture, if they were at war, at Woodstock, the kids won, and we've been kids ever since. And there's sort of, and think about it, can you picture if I say music from the 80s, you can picture right hair. Music from the 70s,
Big hair,
right?
yeah.
Maybe the Bee Gees, right?
Right.
Music from the 60s,
Beatles.
you can hear it. Music from the 50s,
Elvis.
40s, 30s. See how hard it gets?
Yeah, it gets
30s.
harder.
And it's not just because we didn't record stuff.
Yeah, they're just big. They're back into big bands in the 40s. You know, it was bands.
But see, where's that? But that's in the city. What is the overwhelming, most people,
folk music?
Until you have the celebrity glamour, right? Everything around that. You just have culture. And the purpose of culture was to bring your children into the culture. And this is what you did. You made stuff. You made music. You made food. You made love. Right? That was what our culture was. So now when we Catholics, we talk about, well, we got to have Catholic culture. We don't even have like a mechanism to think about it outside of consuming something, like making a purchase.
Right.
Right. That's like, what else are we going to do? Just buy stuff differently? Like shop at, I don't buy at Starbucks. And it can't just be consumer cultures, but that's a sign of the youth, the rise of the youth culture. And then up through the 80s and 90s, we become obsessed with, things like duty and obedience fall away. It becomes self-esteem. Like all of that comes from this complete ascendancy. Well, one, the invention of youth culture, and then the enshrining it. That is our culture now.
Amazing.
We're consumerists. We don't know any other way to do it. like even good Catholics, like you're not a good Catholic unless you got a show, man. You got to.
That's right. Yeah. So,
By the way, you're a good Catholic. I'm just joking about that.
Thanks, man.
Don't get touchy here.
Tan Books is here to help you become a saint. That's why we do everything we do. We publish thousands of titles, literally, that are specifically written to help you get to heaven. Everything from the lives of the saints to the writings of the saints, the greatest doctors of the church, the great spiritual masters, Alphonsus Liguori, St. Francis de Sales, and so on. So please come to tanbooks.com and find the book that God wants you to have right now so that you can get to heaven and be a saint for eternity.
So I guess what I'm thinking about on that consumerism part, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is look at how many times my grandparents would have purchased something.
Mm-hmm.
And, they lived in, not a city, it was a small town, Mount Holly, Mount Holly.
Yeah.
And, and then my other grandparents lived here in Gastonia. But I bet you how often did they purchase something? And I bet you it was like 3 times a week. Like I bet you they went to the grocery store once a week. And I bet you they maybe purchased gas once a week. And then maybe they went out to dinner or they did some other, quick stop at the hardware store on a Saturday, maybe 5 times a week. Maybe. That would be like a busy week. I think the average person in America today purchases something like 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Because they buy something from Amazon constantly. Like, oh, I just need paper towels. Boom. They're not actually doing their weekly shopping. Very few people do that now. Like how many times, I shop all the time because I'm buying books or I'm buying audiobooks or, it's just constantly click, click, click. And it's kind of an obsessive thing. The consumerism, I think people are drowning in decision. So every time you purchase something, you're actually making a decision. You're doing a little bit of math in your head. You're thinking, can I afford this? Should I do this? Mm-hmm. And think about now don't just think about how many times your grandparents, great-grandparents purchased something. Think about the amount of decisions that people 100 years ago had to make each day, right? Now, going out to milk the cows really wasn't a decision. It's just a routine.
Yeah.
How many decisions did they have to make? Where are we going? What are we doing? Who are we going to be with? What are the kids going to be doing today? What am I purchasing? And now we have decision fatigue.
Yeah.
Everything.
It's not just purchases. Think about, you have a conversion. You want to live for Christ. You want to be like a Catholic, like a serious Catholic. And that begins then all of us, Catholic culture's collapsed. So then we don't even have a shared culture where we know this is how our kids are going to dress. Like you want to rip up a community, start talking about how the girls should dress.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we don't have an inherited way to do things, which means all of us are making decisions. And our community life is based on like, well, where do you draw the line on video games or this? And it all comes down to what we listen to, how we dress. Like, I mean, that's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
And then we're negotiating our community based on decisions.
Yeah.
Like, well, what kind of decisions is that family making? Well, that's a decision their family made. Well, you do you, and you. It's exhausting, and it breaks. It doesn't just break us up internally in our own home. It breaks up our communities because you're just. I mean, the best thing you do is like you're just comparing notes with people and finding someone like, all right, we draw lines in similar places. I guess we can hang out.
Right.
Or you have like alternative friends, like my Catholic friends. I like them. I'm glad we're all conservative and like we're worshiping right and all that stuff. You might have a whole other set of buddies that you can just be human with. Yeah. Because you probably share a culture with them, like more in common.
F3 was that for me. I used to do that a lot. You've heard of F3.
Yeah, the fitness.
Yeah. And I would,
obviously I'm really into it.
I don't do it anymore, but when I lived in Fort Mill, it was more of like there's more density, a lot more population. So they had F3 groups all over the place. And I took my teenage sons or my middle school sons out there and we'd work out at 5 a.m. in the morning. And it was 90% evangelicals. Mm-hmm. But they're good men. Just normal guys. And it was just normal guys, and I got a lot out of it. The friendship has a certain limit, but it is kind of a regrettable thing when you have to be. Yes, you have to be very intentional about your relationships, but you're right. I can feel that in our life when you're looking at, okay, this homeschool family, where do they go to mass? How are they raising their teenage girls? Are they good playmates for our teenage girls? Yeah, but their teenage boy's really out of whack. And the dad, I don't really like the dad, but the mom's great. You're calculating all of this stuff. It's become way too decision-based.
Calculating.
I hate it. But you kind of feel like you have to because like the most important thing a mom and dad can do is to create a good, healthy environment for your kids to flourish. And that's mostly who they're hanging out with, who they're spending their time with. I mean,
all of that though is an exhausted. We talk about the byproduct of suburbanization. We talked about that earlier. A lot of people get touchy as if we're criticizing. We're just observing the reality. We're not trying to criticize because most people we've inherited where we are now. It's not like we stepped into it. We didn't create this. But the suburban home is defined by everything you're going to do, you're going to leave to go do it, right? Unless you're having a cookout. You're going to go to ballet. You're going to go to football. You're going to go to this cookout, right, at someone else's house. You're going to go to this church thing. You're going to go to this youth group. So to do anything human you have to make a decision. Versus, and I know people idealize this for good reasons, like it's romanticized because it's romantic, but like a village with a culture and a religion and pretty structured ways of economic dealings, you're not making any decisions.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's why I love the homestead. I always tell my wife, like, you brought up the decision, like, I just want to live where I don't have to decide. It sounds like a bad leader.
No. That's what I'm saying.
Like you get up, like we're going to milk, and that's why that's why we have a dairy.
It's not really a decision. You made a decision a long time ago to live that life, and then you just get in the rhythm of it.
Well, I've come. I mean, the longer we have kids, the more we try to do this Catholic thing. And again, because my wife, we're both converts. We don't know what we're doing. But I learned, I was raised in the liberal society we live in, which is the ultimate good is freedom. And I'm like, that's not true at all. Everything good in my life that has helped me to flourish in the ways that seem pretty obvious in scripture I'm supposed to flourish, love God, love your neighbor, love your wife, take care of your kids. All of those are actually restricting to my freedom. Everything in my life that has brought me to a greater order, greater peace, greater surrender to God restricts my freedom. Mm-hmm. Marriage, if you think that restricts your freedom, not enough. We'll have some kids, right? And then now we have Catholic neighbors around us now. And I don't have to guess, well, who's my neighbor? Like almost the decisions we have is like Pharisees coming to Jesus. Well, like, who's my neighbor I'm supposed to love? Like, it's like, I love my neighbor. It's who I'm supposed to take care of. I know where they are.
The Latin for decision is desire. So cire, you can hear scissors, mm-hmm. to cut, right? A decision is to cut away from. An incision is to cut into. That's what a surgery is, right? So a decision. So when you're saying that you make these decisions that restrict your freedom, when you get married, that's a decision. You're cutting away every mm-hmm. other woman in the world.
Yeah.
And
big
that's
cut.
Yeah, it's a big cut. Why, and I've never asked you this, I don't know the answer to this. Why and how did you convert? I don't even think of you as a convert.
Yeah.
I don't really, in my head, I don't put you in the convert category. I don't know why.
Too normal?
Yeah, I think that, by the way, I was going to say this. I had a mental note. I'm going to blow up your head and you're not going to fit out the door. But this is the reason people like Jason Craig so much. And
people don't like Jason Craig.
They do. And I told you, like, before I met you, I'd heard all about you. And then I go and I show up at your farm for this thing. Oh, I'm finally going to get to meet Jason Craig because I've heard all about this legend, this myth. and I go and I'm like, I'm looking for some 6'5",
guy that goes to F3.
Yeah, I'm looking for this guy and they're like, that guy. I'm like, that's Jason. It's like, he looks normal, And then we start talking, and I'm like, this is like Beavis and Butthead with Thomas Aquinas. This is like
You
great.
just described my conversion story.
Well,
Yeah.
Beavis and Butthead meets Aquinas on a farm.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Am I Beavis or Butthead?
I don't know, dude. I'm one of them. Yeah. But so I think the reason people are so intrigued by you, seriously, is because I've thought about this. You're the most normal human being I know, which is extremely abnormal. Seriously, that's like, if you get canonized one day, right? You die today, I'll spend the rest of my career trying to get you canonized, right?
That's correct.
And it's like,
not very good looking, pretty normal.
Patron saint of normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of our core values is on the wall when you walk out there. When you're leaving, we have those big things hanging on the wall, right, as you're going out the door.
Yeah.
One of those has our core values on it for the business, for TAN. Normalcy.
Normal's one of them.
Is one of them, because when you get into the trad world, there's some weirdos.
Yeah.
A whole lot of weirdos.
Yeah. Dungeons and Dragons Catholicism.
Yeah. It gets really weird.
Yeah.
So you're the patron saint of normal stuff, normal people, which is so completely abnormal. It's like Chesterton says, common sense is uncommon. But tell us why you converted, how you converted. What's that story? I have no idea.
Okay. Well, first of all, people closer to me don't like me as much. So it's better to have the myth far away.
That's usually the case.
That's
usually
right.
the case.
Yeah, you hurt people that are closer to you. You don't hurt people distant.
They tried to poison St. Benedict. So,
that's comforting.
Your wife and kids haven't tried to poison you yet. So
I have a very good wife and a very good relationship with her. So that helps with a lot of things. And she's a hottie. So,
awesome.
I grew up, and sadly it's a typical American situation, but I'm really grateful for it. I don't want to tell this as a sob story. My parents are divorced. I don't ever remember them being together. I actually lived in Cincinnati, Ohio. My family's all from North Carolina. I never tell people this because I'm like, when people say, where are you from? I say North Carolina, because my family was there, but lived in Cincinnati. My parents divorced, lived with my mom. Really interesting experience there. That'd be we should talk about that. You come to my podcast.
Sure.
That I went to a Catholic school, but that was because in Cincinnati, it became really clear to me, because I lived in the ghetto. Like, there was Section 8 housing on both sides of our house. So I was the only white kid in the neighborhood, except for Chet up the street. But a guy named Chet's not going to be much help for you. Just kidding. Chet was great. He was a good friend. But my mom was actually dating a black guy. It was it's like a stepfather figure for like 7 years of my life. Lived in the black part of the neighborhood, or in the city. And the reason I went to Catholic school was because in Cincinnati, at least this is my impression, and if someone is that the black kids went to public school and the white kids went to Catholic school. So I experienced this like extreme segregation. But when I was 12, I went to live, this has to do with becoming Catholic. When I was 12, I went to go live with my dad, which was the best thing that could happen, because he just brought me to work with him. And he was a plumber, just learned normalcy. But all that being said, there's some brokenness there, and I fell into very typical sins of, teenager, the life that's proposed to them. My wife, she's also a convert. We both joke, like, it's funny when parents are surprised, like when you listen to the music, you're letting and watch the movies, that their life implodes in immorality. It's like, that is what is proposed to them as happiness. So relationships, drugs, like just normal impurities, stupid stuff as a teenager. But through a Protestant ministry called Young Life, this guy befriended me, and like the way they do it, it's really, they just go into public schools, and someone you might think they're weird or something, but my experience was they just really loved Jesus and wanted other people to know him. Yeah. And this guy changed my life because I had plenty of friends in high school. I was like, I was fine in high school, but I was miserable on the inside. There was a lot of misery, and he just looked at me and loved me and converted me through his friendship. So I became a Young Life leader, but my mind kind of woke up a little bit, and I became a Reformed, like very Calvinist, which is more common than you would think in the evangelical world. And
those are the thinkers. They think. Yeah.
Well, I appreciated it. I mean, like the Westminster Catechism, the Reformed Christians, the Reformed Protestants, like they're the thinking Protestants, and a lot of them have an evangelical bent to them. Like a lot of these little church plants that you think are, I don't know, like just new non-denominational. They're actually like Presbyterians or PCA or Calvin. A lot of them are Calvinists. So anyway, I'm dating my now wife, and we're living in Wilmington, and we're driving to this church that had just started, and we're passing like 13 churches on the way there. And, just these questions like,
why are there so many?
Why are there so many? And I remember these moments where the pastor held up the Bible and said, if there was any church in this town teaching what was in this book, we wouldn't have had to start this church. I remember, like, that just really stuck with me. But I basically became like a bohemian Christian, where I like the church thing, like wherever I went, where it was the true church, like just this kind of like weird Gnostic mystical. So I went off to Oregon at an internship, and I was living with Mormons.
Internship for what?
Horticulture.
Really?
I wanted to work at a nursery, grow plants.
Huh.
Yeah. Actually, I took my first greenhouse class in high school because I wanted to grow marijuana in a greenhouse.
Well, there you go. That's a motivation.
But then I was like, wow, horticulture is great. Greenhouses are cool. I never grew any marijuana. I never did.
I hear you're the biggest supplier for all the
Where's this going to end? Yeah.
Hemp stores?
I can't
What do they call those things?
No.
I don't know. I've never been.
CBD.
CBD, there you go. Yeah.
Apparently that's a real
That all come from the Craig farm?
No, we're not that good at farming. No,
you said you didn't make money. You're making a fortune on that. Sorry, keep going. So you're with Mormons?
I was with Mormons, and they were the ones. And I don't want to tell the whole story because we can do it another time. But they brought up this idea because we were discussing, of course, the divinity of Christ, because they don't believe Christ was divine, and we're like back and forth. And he goes, "Well, look, the only people claiming authority on earth are us, the Mormons, and the Catholics." It was like a really bizarre statement, because I try to tell Catholics, like, you're not even on the radar of like legitimate true Christianity for a lot of Protestants. Like, so you're all friendly and chummy and trying to be ecumenical with them. You're not even like, you might as well be a Muslim. Like and someone like, well, there are some Christians that are Catholic too. Like they'll say stuff like that really believe in, like, you're not even on the radar. And Catholics were not on my radar.
Yeah.
In fact, in Young Life, we would go after Catholics because they were easy. They had just enough of the gospel, but like just enough misunderstanding that you could evangelize them really easily.
But
so
it's interesting that Mormons would think about us more. Yeah.
They would. I don't even know if this is common for them, but I guess they claim authority. They're like, yeah, we have authority. That's the big difference between them, and a lot of Protestants. Like, well, we don't necessarily claim authority, except our only authority is Christ in the scriptures, But practically speaking, they do claim authority.
Yeah, because a Presbyterian's going to say, "Oh, you want to start a Methodist church? More power to you."
Yeah,
because they don't think that they're the true church.
Yeah,
and if you want, Mormons do have some of that.
If you want to march down normal apologetics, Robert Hugh Benson, who wrote a number
City of
Christ. Come on,
gosh,
you're a publisher.
It's the apocalyptic novel.
Yeah,
come on.
Something of the world.
Lord of the World.
Lord of the World. Lord of the World. Great Catholic.
He also wrote a little book called The Religion of the Common Man.
Yes, we publish it.
Oh, do you?
Yes, we do.
Sweet. Okay, so
I'll give you a copy.
No, I just recently I came here for free books.
Yeah.
But that was my experience, was just sort of thinking through, like, if I really believe in Christ, and it really seems clear there's a church, and so then I basically, long story short, I had another family member who's becoming Catholic. I was like, you got to give me the books you're reading, because I'm going to talk you out of it. That's the worst mistake you can possibly make. And reading those books didn't work out for me to stay Protestant. That is. So yeah, it was conversion to Christ, and then very serious. My wife and I were both Young Life leaders. Very serious sort of like missionary training and zeal.
But you kind of got this sense of authority, and you started looking around for that. But you actually weren't meeting a Catholic that like brought you in. You really read your way in, or what did you do?
Yeah, which is pretty common. I mean, I think that's a sign of God's grace, that a lot of the normal way for conversion, like, not to keep nerding out on books, but I'm not gonna remember the name of this one. But I read a book by a sociologist that most of us think when we have a conversion, we thought our way through it, and usually it's just the relationships around us.
Yeah, relationships.
They form us, and then we legitimize with like the theology why we believe what we believe. But for a lot of Catholic converts, it's actually not true. They don't know any Catholics, and they do read themselves in.
Yeah.
Which I think is an extraordinary sign of God's goodness and grace. No one like reads their way into a Methodist church.
Right.
Like John Wesley's really inspiring. Yeah, but you're not going to become a Methodist. Or maybe some people.
I meet a lot of people that sometimes I wonder if they just say it to sound smart. But a lot of the converts will say, yeah, I started reading the church fathers. They kind of become high Anglican or high some kind of Protestant.
Yeah.
At least intellectually, even if they don't go to that kind of liturgy, they they start reading the church fathers and they convert. A lot of times I wonder, is that legit or are they just trying to sound smart? I don't know. But
I have an uncle. I don't think he'll listen to your podcast. I don't mind saying this. He's a very smart guy, like multiple PhDs, like very accomplished guy. And he was a Catholic and became a Methodist. And I asked him about it, and I'm like, he became a Methodist because my family was a Methodist, and he wanted to marry my aunt. And his church, he describes his church to me. It was just the silly stuff in the 70s. And he just drifted away. But then now when he tells the story, he's like, then I read John Wesley. And it's like, no, you didn't. So most converts legitimize their conversion afterwards, which is fine. Most conversions actually happen because of the relationships around us. So we did read our way in. And when I went to I literally went to a Catholic church, like the local, and I knocked on the door. And like the priest came to the door, and I remember saying, I have to become a Catholic. Like I didn't want to become a Catholic. Like I have to be. And he goes, this first priest I talked to, since my childhood, again, I went to a Catholic school for a while, but I didn't learn anything about Catholicism. But he comes to the door and he goes, well, and he says to me at the door, well, since Vatican II, you don't really have to become a Catholic if you don't want to. And I was like, why? At that, I was like, I don't know what Vatican II is, but I'd like to become a Catholic. And then I went to RCIA. It was hilarious because it was like the first one we went in. They were like, well, why do you want to become a Catholic? And I said, I think the Catholic Church is the one true church that Jesus founded. And they were like, they were offended I said that. And it was that kind of experience. So I converted because it's true. That's why. Yeah. But then I did find in RCA, there was this guy next to me, and it was very clear all of a sudden he was just a normal guy. Pete Hines, maybe he listens to it. And he's just like, hey, you sound like you need a mentor and somebody to talk to. And he basically became like my sponsor. And, I don't know. You've heard people call RCA repelling converts inadvertently.
Oh no,
that was my experience. It was something, but we made it.
That's awesome. So now you and your wife have how many kids?
8.
8 kids.
Yeah.
How are they doing?
They're good.
I saw your daughter at the conference, and she's like a woman now.
She's a woman. Well, we're done parenting with her. I mean, she's just doing it. That's, excuse me. We were just talking about the greenhouse at the beginning of the podcast. Like, we've switched. Sorry, let me silence my dumb phone vibrating here. Right. We had some sort of switch. We just realized that we're not the young family anymore. You start having kids.
I do know exactly what you mean.
And everyone's like, oh, you're cute, until you have like 4, and then you're like, oh, you're not cute anymore. And your kids are getting older, and there's a bunch of them. And we just have switched to like the older ones are like running the show.
Have you noticed when you see like a lot of the young couples at church, particularly for me, the mothers are starting to look really young.
Yeah.
Really young.
Yeah. Well,
I'm a granddad now, so it's kind of. How old are you?
40.
I'm 45. Yeah.
45. Yeah. You looked older.
Yeah. Shut up. So
hold on. I want to ask you because. So, tell me this: when we see the young families, what we hear. Well, you have kind of an ideal family, right? I mean, you guys are successful.
Oh, it's ideal.
leaders.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect.
But you remember, like,
we should have a
because
reality
we all haven't. It's called the well-ordered.
Oh gosh.
Because we have, again, I think Catholicism, the Catholic culture that sustains people, that you can trace, you can read about it, but it's like distant. It's collapsed. So young families find themselves listening to podcasts, reading books, making decisions on like how their family's going to be. But because it's not an inherited, insulated culture, I mean insulated in a good way, like keeping the fire warm kind of thing. When we see young families now, we almost look and go, it's going to be harder than you think. Mm-hmm. And you think you're just going to homeschool or homestead. Yeah. And that's, I guess, like now I'm like, Katie, are we old and like.
Yeah, curmudgeon.
Yeah, no, like, yeah. And I think it's just like you haven't been, and it's not to like dismiss enthusiasm or hope. It's just to say there's lessons you can't know yet because you haven't suffered through the reality.
Yeah, and the 70-year-old men listening to these 2 young guys, because we're young to them, they're sitting there saying, you don't even get it.
Yeah.
This old guy who worked in this building for a long time, his name was Lewis Holland. He'd be probably 100 now or something. He died a number of years ago, 90 something, World War II guy. But he would always say, boy, I got socks older than you, But
that's great.
He often talked about like to get old, you got to be really tough. You got to be really tough. And I kind of tell that to parents. When I coach a lot of parents around the country, I give a lot of talks to families on a number of my different books, Parenting for Eternity, Well-Ordered Family. And when I meet these, they hear you got 16 kids. First of all, you can stink at parenting, but just because you have 16 kids, they assume you're good at it.
Right.
You know? It's like, and that'd be like going to a guy who inherited millions of dollars and assuming that he's a good businessman because he has millions of dollars. I mean, it's a stupid assumption, but people do it, you know? So, you know, when young couples come to me and I'm like, okay, tell me about your family. That's always usually a conversation starter. And if they have like 3 or 4 kids under the age of 5 or 6 or something.
Yeah.
I don't say, oh, isn't it great? You're just, you know, enjoy it while it lasts. You know, I'm not doing that kind of thing. I look at them and say, oh man, you're in the hardest pot.
It's the worst. You know? Yes. Yeah.
And, you know, wait till the oldest kid is 12. So at least you have a built-in babysitter. And that's kind of like the mini promised land. And then when the oldest turns 16, then you don't ever have to go to the grocery store again. And that's the real promised land because they can actually drive and do stuff and take the other kids places. And that's great. Yeah. But the other thing I tell them.
By the way, we're just there. This year, we'll have a driver for the first time.
It's awesome.
So
yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
And by the way, can I give you driver's ed advice real quick?
Well, it's too late now. She's already been through it.
Oh, she has?
Yeah.
Does she have her license yet?
No.
Okay, well, this is the point. So I went to there's this thing called Brakes, I think it is. And it's like super duper driver's ed. And I took my oldest kids. You go to the Charlotte Speedway, and it was founded by a guy whose 16-year-old son sped like crazy, reckless driving, killed himself and somebody else or something like that. It was a real tragedy. So he started a driver's ed that's kind of a real defensive driving school and everything. But one of the things that they really etched into my memory was that when your kids have a permit, you need to drive with them constantly. It's my point is this: when your daughter gets her full license, then you're pretty much done driving with her.
Yeah.
Like she'll drive and you won't. You'll ride with your wife or something, you know?
Yeah.
But while she has a permit, if it's raining, you need to let her drive. If it's snowing, you need to let her drive. Because the next time it snows, she's going to have a license and she's never driven with you and she's going to go drive in the snow. So you have to like get your kid driving constantly when you need.
It's so hard. I don't want.
I know.
I go to the driver's seat and like,
I know.
And then she's like, "Can I drive?" And
You
I always
have
got
to.
some reason. No, it's raining. It's
I know, and that's the thing. You really have to like resist that temptation. Oh, I'm in a hurry. It's just easier if I drive.
Yeah.
You have to resist. You got 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is.
My wife is not going to watch your show.
You have to let them drive every chance you get in the car.
She would say, "I told you so."
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, it's harder for her.
And when my kids first get permits, I don't let them drive the 15-passenger van with there's just too much cargo in there to hurt.
Yeah. So
but every time they're with me, they have to drive, even when the conditions terrible.
Yeah.
So it's just something that I have no idea how I got on all that. What were we talking about before that?
Raising kids, advice from
I tell young parents that, you know, that if you're going to continue on this path, like you've already had 3 kids in 5 years, that tells me something, right? Mm-hmm. You usually, people that do that are not saying we're having 4 and stopping. Like that's not the way they think.
Yeah.
So you're kind of going this for the long haul. It's really not helpful to them to just say everything's going to be peachy keen, fine.
Yeah.
You need to tell them this is a marathon. This is hard. Certain things get a whole lot easier. Other things get a whole lot harder.
Right.
And you need to be tough and you need to persevere. And that's actually more hope-filled for people than giving them some kind of, you know, pink cloud to try to sit on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, the same thing when you see 3 or 4, 5 kids, I would say the same thing. It's hard. I mean, I didn't grow up in a big family.
Right.
I grew up split between 2 divorce home, right? It's like, I don't know. I always joke, I have 2 half sisters, so 1 whole sister.
Right.
Like, I don't know. But when we had 1, I didn't know how hard 1 was going to be.
Yeah.
Then it was 2. It was like, wow, this is hard. You know, and then the joke 3 is zone defense. And then 4, you have 4 people that can't take care of themselves in your home. And then you as the father leave every day.
Yeah.
And then your wife starts to feel the pressure of the modern educational system. It wants to be like, oh, the kid's 5 and he's not reading yet. And they start homeschooling. She's kind of cook everything and dress like a Pinterest trad wife and make the sourdough and then have the garden and then you got to come help pay. It's hard.
It's hard.
And so much falls on the moms. What was the book? John Steinbeck, not East of Eden. When you talk about like the farmers' wives, like, yeah, they burned through about 4 wives in their lifetime or burn through a wife every 4 years. Like life was so hard. Like,
yeah.
It's like that's what we're doing with a lot of like these Catholic moms. It's hard. It's going to be hard, and it's not to say I think you're honest and it's good. It is good, like but it's going to perfect you in like the way the cross does.
Yeah,
not in you're going to get your formula right. You're going to be a great homeschooling family. Your van's never going to be a mess. You're going to organize the laundry well. In fact, yeah, I don't like to tell. We don't. If you try to find my family pic, we don't do any sharenting. Like, we don't have no social media. We don't put pictures of them online. But if anyone does believe a myth about my family, it'd be good to visit and see just how chaotic and messy, it's dirty. See, you have a super cleaner wife.
I don't. I mean, she desires it. Her sacrifice, her suffering. I mean, she grew up a germaphobe, and her parents are germaphobes. Mm-hmm. And so she grew up in a perfectly spotless house. I mean, her mother worked for the Red Cross and her dad was a firefighter. So it was like, they were just perfectly organized human beings. And so my wife's spiritual evolution has been learning how to let go of those things. We still have a pretty clean house in the sense we're big on chores, because I think chores are kind of what builds character. By the way, a Harvard study came out like a couple months back, and it shows a direct correlation between the number of chores a kid has and their success as an adult.
As a leader?
I mean, you and I don't need a PhD Harvard study to tell us that. We know that. Chores breed character. So even if they're not working on the farm, even if they're not milking a cow, they can still do dishes. They can still clean the bathroom. They can still, clean up the garage. Funny. There's a million chores to do. You got a bunch of kids. Like, my kids are turning out really good, but honestly, Jason, when I look at it, it's much more about this little ecosystem that we have, of the friends we have, the parish we have, the property that we have, and then all the kids providing what the other kids need, built-in playmates.
Okay, so this is what we were talking about earlier. That's what the family is supposed to do.
That's what it is. And so it's like, really, this is not a false humility kind of thing. It's like legit. I really don't feel anymore that like I'm some good parent that's teaching my kids how to be right.
Right. Yeah.
But I have constructed with my wife an environment in which my kids kind of teach each other how to be good human beings.
No, so that's the exhausting. I don't know if you were at when we did the Liturgy Land conference. It was in the older families, the Dohertys were there, and it just hit me. What you're really doing when you're a young family and you're not inheriting a culture, you're not just stepping into the stream of it. St. Therese of Lisieux's family didn't have to decide how their life was. There was just a way of life. She didn't discern a religious order. She went to the Carmelites up the hill, right? Yeah. It's when there's an inherited culture, you just step into the stream of it. We don't live in that. But when you're a young family, you're having decision fatigue. It's effort. And that's where the Dohertys and what you're describing, what we're starting to enjoy, is there is a rest that happens. Now you're not done parenting, you're not finished, but like when a culture is created in your home, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And so, which is the opposite of the teenage or youth culture we're talking about, because the very moment they can become useful to the household, they extract themselves to go have fun for the next 8-10 years.
I know that. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's not just, they need to learn character or they need hardship, because they can do that in sports. No, they need to take care of people to whom they belong and belong to them by birth, not choice. There's no decision. And so my boy, we had a girl and then 5 boys in a row, right? The joke, the decade of savagery, right? Just 5 boys for a day. And then when we've had 2 more girls. And I don't have to it's a huge blessing to be able to live on a homestead and do this, but I'm not like coming up with ways they can learn how to be empathetic with young kids. Like they see that their sister is not feeling well and they just hold her.
They just do stuff.
And and having that culture now existing is so much less work, because, instead of a household of needy consumer, right? Because a child is a consumer. A parent is a producer, a child is a consumer. They consume because they can't produce. They're incapable, they're incompetent. Not in an evil way, but it's just they're deficient. They haven't grown. But when they're teenagers, when the older kids, when the whole family is taking care of each other, it's beautiful and it gets easier. I know you got the teenage, or the adolescent young man, young woman drama, but
I've never had real teenage drama. Like people talk about it. We haven't had it,
Do you have a strong relationship with your kids as they get older? Do you stay close to them?
Yes, definitely. But so far, I mean, I guess I have 3 adult children, technically adults, and then I got my fourth kid is, I guess I have four adult children, 19 and up. And then my number 5 is 17, almost 18. So
but he's the one like building chicken coops or something?
That's the 20-year-old Patrick. Okay. I think he's 20. Changes every year. But
that's a go-to joke, isn't it?
Yeah. So he's doing really great. He's probably going to pursue general contractor stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But my point is that the teenage years, sometimes it is hard. We have never dealt with teenage drama, and I don't think you are either. You're not going to deal with some bratty teenage girl. It's not that. And you're not going to deal with some heavily rebellious teenage son. Like, that's probably not going to happen to you. They're going to puff up their chest a few times. They're going to stand up to you a few times. The girls are going to be girls. They're going to be inclined a little bit more towards whatever. But but I've never dealt with nasty teenagers that people always warn you about. Mm-hmm. But there is a distance sometimes that I experience in the teenage years where you come home and it's like, how was your day, son? Good. What'd you learn today? I don't know, nothing. And it's like, how was work? Because they start working.
Yeah.
Goes to the bagel shop and work. How was work? Good. What'd you do? Made bagels. I mean, it's just, all right, kid, you're dumb. Get out of here. And so sometimes that can be the case because there is just kind of a malaise that teenagers can kind of go through. Mm-hmm. But here's my point is that so far with all 4 of them, I would say the first 4, they push through that teenage stuff. And when they get into college, my relationship with them has improved. And then even when they graduate college, and my 2 oldest have kids, one of them he's got a career. The other one is a stay-at-home mom. My relationship with them, these full-blown adults with their own children, their own families, their own careers, my relationship with them is even closer than when they were in college, closer than when they were in high school. So it's, you go through some valleys, and sometimes teenage years can be a valley, but man, I'm on a peak right now with my adult children. I'm closer to them than ever before. My oldest son, Aiden, just this past weekend, he texted myself and his other adult or teenage brothers, left the daughter out of it. She moved to Raleigh, but I think he was trying to just get a guy thing going. So my 23-year-old, my 20-year-old, my 19-year-old, my 17-year-old, my 15-year-old, and me. And my oldest said, okay, let's get a philosophy book club together, just us guys. And while we still all live in this area before other people disappear. And he came to me and he said, Dad, I sent it out because this might be our last chance because some of these kids might go off to school or might go different places for career or whatever. So let's get together, a couple times a month and have like a book club where we explore Plato or Aristotle or Aquinas or something. And I was like, that is so flipping cool that my son wanted this to engage his siblings and his dad in pursuing deep questions. But the main thing was the relationship. He's not trying to learn. He can do that on ChatGPT. Yeah. He wanted to engage his siblings before life pushes them in different directions. And I'm like, that's cool. What you want out of your oldest son is to try to continue building those bridges. That was amazing.
Right, can I ask you, so two questions.
Do you want to bring order and clarity back into your family life? Hey, I got 16 kids and I understand better than anyone we need to do that. So my wife and I, Ashley, we developed a 6-part family management system to do just that. And it's based on concrete business tools and principles that you can apply in the day-to-day running of your household. So please come to wellorderedfamily.com, check out our tools, our books, and most importantly, our one-on-one coaching so that we can work directly with you and customize a program to help your family get to the next level.
These are like philosophical questions where I'm like, are we at odds here? No, we're not at odds. One, you said when they go to college as an inevitability. It's my first question.
Okay. Let me address that.
I can
go ahead. What's the second one?
And the reason is because it's related. These two questions are related. The presumption that is given to children, and again, that the air we breathe of our culture is that once we're leaders and we're successful, to do that we have to leave home. Right? That once you hit like that college mark and going into it's going to bring us away from each other.
Yeah.
Where he feels like he has to do, I would say, I mean, my not a challenger, like, wouldn't you want to just keep doing that for the rest of your life? Like, and we talk about this with our kids. Like, I want you to be around if I'm sick to take care of me.
Yeah.
I want you to be here to help with a sibling, and I want to be there to help with your kids. And this presumption that we're all gonna the diasporic progeny is we're all gonna, like, every family is a diaspora.
Yeah. Right.
Like, how are we ever going to have a culture if every family like, there's no stability in that.
Yeah.
If you're not thinking in generations, you don't have a Catholic culture.
Right.
But again, it's the air we breathe.
No, you're right. You're right. So, our view on college is, do our kids have to go to college? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, in fact, my first two, and we have a unique situation here. We're 20 minutes away from Belmont Abbey College.
Right.
Okay. When you're a commuter, it is not expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's online college. You can do online college. Here's my view on college, though. And it's like, do I care if my kids go to college? Do I care if my daughters go to college? If they want to be a stay-at-home mom, do I care if they go to college? Well, there's a practical side to it. And the most important thing, I tell my kids the first day of college, because I guess I have 2 that have gone all the way through, and I have 2 and a half more that are in college because we got dual enrollment kids that are in high school. But I'm very clear, Jason. I said the number one thing you're going to college to get is a wife or a husband,
The MRS degree.
So, I'm very serious about that.
Right.
Now,
is that because there's no one in your community that you would?
It's slim picking, man. I mean, it's like there's not a lot there. I mean, there's people in our community, but we don't get to arrange marriages. So, I have 2 kids who have graduated college from Belmont Abbey. Both of them married solid Catholics from Belmont Abbey. They met them at college.
Mm-hmm. What's the story of most?
And the third kid is dating a girl who he was in seminary for a year and a half. He discerned out, and now he's dating a girl at Belmont Abbey who's a solid Catholic. I mean, this is the most important thing they get at college. It's not the damn degree. So
I just that's the reality. So realism just says yes, but it's like that's actually really sad that
it is.
We have to pay to send them to this artificial contemporary culture, which has a good purpose. Education
It does.
is good.
I mean, but studying, first of all, my kids, most of them have participated in the honors college, so they're getting great books.
Yeah.
But my fourth kid, Peter, he thinks he wants to be an accountant. Well, so he's not going to the honors college. He's getting an accounting degree, and he's getting, and so that's fine. It's perfectly fine for him to go do that. So not everybody wants to be plumbers and electricians. Some people actually, they want to do other things. So they go. So I love college. I love studying. But, Patrick, who plans on being a general contractor, we've had a lot of conversations about this. He gets out of seminary and then he's like, well, do I go back to college or do I just go the general contractor route or something? I was like, look, I mean, college is going to be very inexpensive because of the situation we have. That's not the case for everybody, right? So it's right down the street. And here's my son, Patrick. It's not the typical college experience. I think the bigger problem with college is the college experience. Mm-hmm. Not one of my kids has lived on campus, okay? Mm-hmm. They live at I have a guest house. No, not everybody gets this. I mean, but I bought the house I bought because it had a guest house on the property about 30 yards away from my house. I did that on purpose so that if, capital IF, if they decided to go to college, they could go to Belmont Abbey and live in the guest house rather than the dorms. And so
I'm sorry, can we just pause? I don't know if it's this way at Belmont. Hopefully I don't know. But it's like we created youth culture. We put teenagers together. And then we created the college culture. And let me get this straight. You're going from home to living in a co-ed dorm?
Don't get me started.
Anyway. Because I have a master's, but I didn't go to a typical college.
Yeah.
Never had it on campus. I remember visiting my now wife at her dorm, and I'm like, wait, let me get this straight. It's like guys and girls walking to the bathroom and time.
It's crazy.
What?
It's insanity.
Yeah.
So my kids, now Belmont Abbey is not co-ed dorms, but they could do things to improve their dorm situation. But college is a 4-year party. I mean, that's basically
if you're on campus.
If you're on campus, yeah. I mean, not every college. There's exceptions. I mean, Christendom. There's some exceptions. I had a great experience at Steubenville, right? But I have absolutely no desire shocking for some listeners, but then you just don't get it. I have no desire for my kids to have that 4 years experience on college campuses.
Yeah.
Okay. My 2 kids did not miss a damn thing, but they lived at my house. When they want to stay over, they stay with friends in dorms sometimes, especially if they're drinking or whatever, because kids do that and they're smart enough to stay on campus. Don't get in your damn car and drive home.
Yeah.
But they have fun. They have their friends, but they're kind of still in my network, or in my area. But they have freedom. They're not under my exact roof. So I constructed that whole situation for that very purpose.
Right. But that makes, if they're right down the road from you and they're still.
Yeah. And they're still on my property.
Yeah.
And so they're going, but here's the thing. They're going to this, my son Patrick, let's use him as an example. Because of where he works. Now, this kid works 40 hours a week, okay? And he goes to college full time. So there's not a lot of time left to go get in trouble.
Yeah.
He's working 40 hours in the trades, okay? And right now he's working for a company where they build stuff. They build signage, they build display racks for gas stations. They builds 40 hours a week, 40 plus hours a week. He has business trips where he has to actually go and install the things that they build. He has to skip class sometimes. And he's majoring in philosophy at Belmont Abbey College.
Yeah.
He's got a girlfriend. He lives with my parents, his grandparents, because his job is too far from our house. So this kid is living with his grandparents. He's got a solid girlfriend. He works 40 hours a week, and he's taking a full load over more than 15 hours. I think he's taking 18 hours.
Is he the one that wants the philosophy club?
The oldest wanted that, so he'll participate. But my point is this. That's not your typical college experience.
Right.
He's working his butt off. He lives with his grandparents. He commutes into school. He does a school. He's taking night classes because he works during the day.
And he's probably not a moocher at the grandparents' house.
No. So he kind of earns his keep there by fixing everything at their old house. So my point is this, is that I am telling parents, do everything you can to avoid the typical college experience. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. And it's usually a big 4-year party that is really jeopardizing your kids' souls. You have to get creative. You have to do things to try to improve. Not everybody can do what I'm doing. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But we do not have the typical college experience. If any of my kids said, I don't want to go to college, I want to go into this trade, or I want to do this kind of thing instead, great. More power to you. I will help you. I will now take all of my entrepreneurial knowledge and try to help you go do whatever else you want to do. But if you go to college for the purpose of finding a spouse, and if you try to build a situation to where you're working your butt off, and why do I want them to work? Because I want them to be tough.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, if it's 15 hours, you're doing 15 credit hours a semester, and that's all you're doing, you're lazy. It's just too easy. It's just not that many hours.
Yeah.
It's just not that many hours. Your kids should be able to have a part-time job and have an education at the same time. My kid has a full-time job, and he's not like a genius or anything. No. He's just a damn hard worker.
Yeah. Yeah. I got my master's. We had 2 kids, and I was working with fraternists then.
Yeah.
Or still am, but it was, yeah.
Yeah.
You can do it.
So it's, I think the goal as a parent, when you're kind of helping navigate your kids through that college experience, if they go that route, you got to be creative as a mom and dad to try to figure out, how do we use these 4 years? And really, my 2 oldest kids did it in 3 years. Because again, it's 4 years is just slow and lazy. Yeah. Seriously. Now, if you're an engineering major at NC State, I hear horror stories. Like, it's maybe that's different. Maybe that's super duper hard. But I'm sorry, if you're studying in some liberal arts at some school, it's not that hard. Okay.
So it sounds like I would say you want your children to be adults.
I want them to be adults.
Yeah.
But the first day on college, they start college. First of all, there's not a start date. For me, my kids have done dual enrollment from the age of 16. So they start going to college classes. It's just a way for us to outsource homeschooling. You know what I mean? But the purpose of college is to make them tough. You have to look at that time period in their life as their boot camp. It's a multiple year boot camp where they are going to come out of that. They're going to get married, hopefully, or find their vocation to be religious or whatever it is. They have to become tough. And my kids have done that. Now, my oldest kid, he was a bit lazy in college, and there was conflict with us because he was like, hanging out. What are you doing today? I'm hanging out. How many hours can you hang out? And part of that was the job. This is a very practical thing. He was an umpire in baseball, which is awesome. You get paid really, really well. He was a college level umpire during college, but you get paid really, really well for like one game, and then you don't have to do anything for 4 days, and then you have another game,
right?
Another,
you got to stay on.
Yeah. So you're a very highly paid hourly worker, but you won't work many hours.
Yeah.
So there was too much time to hang out. My first kid, the lab rat, we learned that, I thought it was awesome. He was an umpire. It's great, but he had way too much free time.
Yeah.
Okay. My daughter worked at Chick-fil-A as a manager all through college. She had no spare time. She had her social life, but she worked 30 hours plus every week she was in college, and she still did great, and she still had time for friends.
Yeah.
So now my third one is doing the same thing. My fourth one's doing the same thing. He works for the accountant kid. He's working for a financial planner, and he works hard. And so you need to keep your kids extremely busy during college. Do not let them just go to some school and do 15 credit hours and just live off mom and dad. We know people who are like ordering groceries for their college kids because they're away.
Well, I think you're talking about
it is perpetual adolescence, and they come out of college lazier than they went into college.
Yeah, so what's funny is, all right, so children are consumers because they have to be, because they can't produce, like physically, mentally, they can't. They're not there yet. We're raising them up. The mother is nurturing their body so that it can reach its strength and produce, right? So then in traditional history, and this isn't romanticism, this is just the way it was. Like you talk about looking back and a 13-year-old looks like an 18-year-old in these old pictures because they were working. Once they were capable, they were contributing, right, to the household. When the youth culture rises, we talked about earlier, what is youth culture essentially? Is a consuming culture. It is a non-productive consumer. So what is a teenager? Is a non-productive consumer. Someone who is in the home, but we're perpetuating a, co-ed consumer-based formation, which means shuttling them around to get all this, and a lot of it is for the purpose of getting into college. And then you perpetuate the consumer child from all the way. It's not just we're perpetuating adolescence, it's perpetuating childhood. I mean, this is why, only someone who is a man can be childish. You never call a kid childish. Oh, that the child is acting childish. It's like, that's like, oh, horse is acting horsey, right? Mm-hmm. It's a man who's I think what you were saying, letting them be lazy. When men look at like teenagers, and sometimes they get rebuked by like the youth ministry people, so I'm like, oh, you need to affirm them, and like they don't. But when they look and they're repulsed by like a teenager, it's because you're disrespectful, you're aloof, you're unapproachable, you're not taking care of anyone, you're not looking up to anyone, you're not looking down to anyone else. You're in this generational clique, and that's what college can become, this generational clique where you're like cut off. Generational co-ed consuming. But from the parent's perspective, it's like, no wonder we're not a pro-life society, because the child is nothing but burden.
Yeah.
So you talk about your family, like the kids helping, like when your kids get old enough and they are contributing to the household, then to have another child is not another mouth to feed. It's literally another hand to the plow. Like they are helping you do something. But today it's like children are consumers, and we're obliged to make as much money as we can to pay for whatever they want to consume. And then it like culminates in the ultimate consumption of college, right? This just ultimate, huge, expensive party.
Yeah.
Like the best birthday party you've ever had for 4 years, right? With some classes. And then it's over.
And they graduate with a bunch of debt. Then they go to grad school. They're still not married. They meet, they get another $100,000. Now they're like $200,000 in debt, and they meet their spouse at grad school who also has $200,000. So they graduate together, start their little family at 28 years old, and they got $500,000 in debt.
Yeah.
That's really what happens. And so we have successfully pulled off, a way to where, and it's not because we're writing big checks. We've just been very creative in figuring out how to do this. And I know other, very financially strapped families that can do this. Your kids in today's world, they can get a college degree if they think they need that for very cheap. You do not have to let your kids graduate college with a boatload of debt. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jason, I'm a pretty successful guy financially. I'm 45. I am still paying my law school debt. Really? $900 a month, man. Wow. And I got probably 3 or 4 years left, So, every stinking month, $900 goes out the door.
So you want to hear how
so I'm just saying, and that was just from grad school. Thankfully, I didn't have college debt because my parents paid for it.
Right.
But we are really heavily instructing our kids. You got to start your life without debt. You have to start your family without debt. And this was kind of remarkable. I told you my daughter. This is incredible. I don't know if she's going to listen to this, and maybe she doesn't want me like sharing her personal information. But I think this is a testament, right? We figured out a way for her to essentially do college for free. It cost very, very little money. We paid a little bit, but she got scholarships, and she was a day commuter, so it just got real cheap. She worked for 30 plus hours a week all the way through college, right? Her husband, who she ended up going to college with, did the same thing. He worked every summer and saved up a bunch of money. He worked a little bit during college. He got his college really cheap as well. These two kids, they get married right out of college. And, when he comes to me to ask for my daughter's hand in marriage, right? I'm like, well, what's the financial situation? How are you guys going to, do this? Because he didn't have a graduate degree. You graduate with a degree in political philosophy or something. It's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we have over $50,000 in savings. I'm like, what? What? It's unbelievable, because my daughter had saved more than he had, a ton of money from working at Chick-fil-A. He had saved some money from working summers. These kids had no debt, and these kids had 50 grand in the bank the day they got married.
Wow.
That's possible.
Yeah.
But not if you go to a 4-year stupid party.
Yeah. And finance the whole thing.
So this is an amazing thing. Now, these kids are 21 and 22 with a baby in their own house. They bought a house at 21 and 22, and they're living. I mean, it's amazing. Most people can't get houses till they're 40.
Especially now. Yeah, it's only going to
get
worse.
So it's unbelievable. My point is, parents really can help their kids do this, but they have to have this terror of debt. You want to give your kids a great blessing, a great inheritance, give them a terror of debt. A terror of debt. By the way, this has nothing to do with anything, but I found this fascinating. You would find this fascinating. And then we should wrap it up, because it's been a while. But I was listening to Dave Ramsey, who I really like. You would like this. And he said, he was on Tucker Carlson's show. That's a good one to listen to. Like, if you ever listen to Dave Ramsey, listen to his hour and a half with Tucker Carlson. It's really, really good, because it's like Dave Ramsey in an hour and a half. So, but he pointed out, in the old days, when you take out cash, you go to the store, you hand cash to somebody and they give you the goods. And it's basically a bartering. It's a barter, right? I give you this physical thing, and I lose that physical thing, and I take this physical thing. That's a bartering. But with the debit cards, credit cards, I swipe the plastic and I put it right back in my pocket. So I don't have the psychological sense of loss. It doesn't feel like a barter. Now, they got the money, but it's like being able to hand somebody cash and take the cash right back and put it in my pocket. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So this consumeristic culture that we've been talking about, it just was coming to my mind, because it's one of those things where even the way we pay things, just clicking buttons, we don't even have that physiological sense of loss here and let it go. You
Which
get
is
to put
doing something to us. Yeah.
So handing somebody cash is better for the soul than swiping the card. For real.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
You feel it.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, my kids are dealing in cash, and then we'll wrap it up. My kids are dealing in cash because my daughter, she's raising pigs, and I'm keeping some of the money. We had to learn what a run on the bank was, because she's like, you owe me like $1,300. I'm like, we need to talk about when you might need that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
That's the best movie to teach what a run on the bank is.
Yeah. No, and we had to talk about that in the household, if they all wanted their money all at once. Because, we keep accounts for, but they have money. And it's like, we haven't had that much cash around the house, but there's a lot of farm exchange, and, one of my sons has some money, and it's totally different from what do we need? It's on Amazon, click, it's here. Like, having to account with your kids of these things. And it wasn't until they had the money, right, they could hold it, that they started feeling like what something costs.
Yeah.
And I can even see, even in my daughter, when she gets anxious when we, the parent, when we buy something, and she's not sure, did we really need to buy that?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great experience.
And I think it's just because she's actually dealt with money.
Now, let me drop a bomb on you, because we can go as long. I don't care, but we should not go too much longer.
I gotta go home.
But yeah, it's 2:00.
Okay.
But here's a question, not to give a long answer, but kind of short. Speaking of dropping bombs on you and thinking about a bank run, you talk to preppers all the time, I'm sure, because they kind of maybe think of a homesteader as basically a prepper. Well, where do you think things are going? Like, how do you think, what's the likelihood of preppers needing to have prepped, and what are the chances of having massive bank runs? What are the chances of people knocking on Jason Craig's door saying, hey, can I have some of your chickens? I mean, if there's speaking of a bomb dropping, like, an EMT, or what is that what they call it? EMT, not EMT, EMP. EMT is a paramedic, but an EMP going off, losing electricity, all these kinds of horror stories we talk about. You've lived in this kind of world that kind of intersects with prepping. You're a cultural critic, like you understand how culture is moving. Where are we in all of this?
So a year ago, I wouldn't have had much to say because I don't have a natural inclination towards prepping. Like, I'm not good at it. Like, we grow most of our food, like a lot of our food, but we don't can anything, for example.
Yeah,
which is
we've never canned.
We
either.
need to can.
We need to learn.
We need to learn how to or preserve, I would say better than. But and I just don't really. I enjoy talking about conspiracy theories and what might happen, but part of me is just like, I just feel like the devil's won. We've got like this charade where everyone's soul is dying. Like, if we can just kind of keep it going, it seems like a better game than like blow it all up. Because it. But then.
Why would he want to bring about that?
No, I think we got a great thing going. I mean, souls are just, this is not good for us. We're like, why take your enemy out of the poison? So I don't have a lot of
That's the devil talking.
Yes, the devil talking. Right. Yeah, a little screw tape letter there.
Yeah.
So, but then Helene came, and we were in the Hurricane Helene.
Yeah. And I forgot to ask you about that. I don't think of you as in the middle of that. I think of the mountains.
So Polk County is where the dam that was breaking. That's my county.
Oh,
my wife got the text while I was out trying to get gas for the generator. She got the text, evacuate for the. Now I was like, sweetie, if we get flooded, like, just get an ark. We're not in the zone, but so I mean, we weren't up in Asheville where it was flooding, but but power was out, phones were out. You knew more about Helene than I did.
Yeah.
In the days after, and our power, and it wasn't just.
How long was it out for you?
A week.
Yeah, that's a long time.
It's a long time, and it wasn't just the power's out. It was cell phones aren't working.
Yeah.
There's no gas. Gas is already out because no one was prepared for this. No one, and it was an eye opener. I was extremely grateful to be on. I'll just say it this: I was extremely grateful to be on a farm. I was very happy to have provisions, like even the stuff we had in the freezers, and it wasn't like it was peaceful. It was good, and all of a sudden, all the neighbors, like, we all were taking care of each other, and we knew each other again. And people were like, "Wait, you have milk?" I'm like, "Yeah, the cows aren't yard art, like But where I live is weird. I mean, we have a butcher, I'm a dairy, and we have a vegetable grower, like, all within a mile. So and again, like, you're in the Belmont. It's not. I know that's not every rural location. Just because you're rural doesn't mean you're prepared. By the way, actually, probably means you're less prepared. But so I don't know where things are going. I can't answer that. I have conspiracy theory friends. I literally called them on the way here, like, "What's the news?" Because I don't keep up. I don't have, for whatever reason, I just don't have the intuition to care. I'd rather just be prepared because the life of preparedness is a good life. But after Helene, I realized I couldn't. It's so fragile. Like, everything is so fragile. It was amazing how different. Drastically different life was when everything was cut off.
Yeah.
I mean, when you can't call, like, you can't get, like, you've got nothing. It was weird, and that was a wake up call. So
yeah, it was a wake up call for me because when our power went out, I realized, wait a minute, I can't make my coffee. So I got in the car. I'm like, I need coffee. And I drove, and I was like dodging trees, falling all over the ground and everything. Like, there's like live electric wires across it. I'm like, if I go really fast, the momentum will just take me over. You know?
Electricity can't grab you.
And I got rubber tires, right? So I should be fine. Yeah. So I finally, so here's the thing. Like, I was really suffering underneath this Helene because I didn't have my coffee, right? Mm-hmm. And so I find a gas station somewhere that's open. I get in there and I get coffee. True story. I'm pulling out of the parking lot, and I see my son in his car right next to me, who lives, 20, 30 minutes away from us.
Getting coffee.
His wife had a baby the day before. It was his first baby the day before. And she just had gotten home, and Helene hits, right? So they were out. And he pulls up next to me. I'm like, son, what are you doing out? This is crazy. He's like, I came to get coffee because my wife, who just had a baby, wants a cup of coffee. So I literally reach out the window and I hand him my coffee. And then I went home from there and I didn't get my coffee. I was like, well, so major sacrifice during Homeland, you know.
Yeah.
No, but I'm making fun of it because we're ridiculous. Like my biggest concern, I'm just saying, I'm making fun of it, but it's like, where's my coffee? And I realized, I have camping gear and I have a coffee pot I could have just put on the fire outside and just, just made coffee outside. I don't even know why I didn't think about that, but
the weather after Helene was beautiful because we had the neighbors were coming over, the kids were playing music, and we're into music, so they're all playing these folk songs. We're cooking on a fire.
Yeah,
but it was like 71 degrees.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I remember that.
So, but it was afterwards. It was like, I think this is how we're supposed to be living.
Yeah,
I remember saying that to like the little community we kind of have around us. I'm like, I bet when this ends, we all just go back to normal.
And
we did.
Yeah, and so I know some people that my wife is from Asheville, right? And so
that's right.
And her mother works up there. They live down here, but she commutes up there sometimes. But I have an uncle who lives right in the middle of Asheville. I mean, so the devastation was horrific. It was horrific. But and you're reading stories about. Well, you didn't read anything for a couple of days, but my biggest concern was, where's my coffee? Yeah. How pathetic. And it was suffering for me because I'm a total and complete wimp. So I need to toughen up a little bit. But anyway, all right, man, it's been good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for talking. I'll come on your podcast next.
Yeah, let's do it. I got to build a studio just
awesome.
For you.
Thanks, buddy. What are you going to call it?
The Conor Gallagher Studio.
Sweet. Thanks, man. And I'm going to call this skull here the Jason Craig skull. Anyway.
All right. It's too small.
See ya.
Hey, thanks guys for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it. And I appreciate that very much.